Was it all right? Just time. And it went, I just don't know what's out there. And how can it affect different people different ways? Well, you know, Sheila's store is running, she says she's running 125 an hour.
Did they have it? Oh, yeah, we went last year.
And then she's been to the doctor, urgent care. Everywhere, they can't find it.
Somewhere out in Raleigh, it was
Some
hotel
research train,
something.
something like that.
I think it was research train.
Yeah, something
RTP.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but she has
All I
brought
know
us
is
that
that
stuff 4 or
there
5
was
times. It's time to
the
do something
security
about that.
presence that there has been in the
But-
past, and it made me a little bit nervous. It's so easy to take out every single decision maker in Wake County.
Yeah, he's a year older than when we saw him last time, I think. Didn't he? Didn't he have a birthday last week? I think he did.
Birthday last week?
Sunday.
You're trying to catch up with me, I know.
You're catching on. You see what's going on.
Let's meeting to order. The Zebulon Board of Commissioners work session, 11/17/22. First, we will ask for the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion we approve the agenda.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Motion passes. Next, we hear from Manager Moore, insurance renewal.
Thank you, Mayor. The staff is bringing forward to the Board of Commissioners 7 items. The first 3 items on health insurance renewal, retention incentive funding agreement, and special event standards. We're seeking a decision from the board members. For the remaining items, they are just information only, and we're seeking feedback. And with that, I'll recognize Bobby Fitz, Finance Director, to introduce the health insurance renewal topic.
All right, thanks, Joe. As Joe mentioned, it's time to do the 2023 health, dental, and vision insurance renewal. And I'm going to turn it over to Paul Sider with our broker and advisor from Independent Benefit Advisors. And he will go through his brief presentation. And as Joe said, we'll seek some guidance and decision on the plan year.
You can share my table if you want. I'm just going to scoot right over here.
Sorry for the delay. I'm just looking for the slides I was expecting they would be on screen.
It would be right there.
There we go. And so the focus of the presentation is on how the town has been growing over the years, and the town's employees are experiencing growth, and we're having a lot of young employees with families and wives and children, spouses, children, that find that the town's health insurance, as it has become more and more expensive over time, is becoming unaffordable for their family members. And so we have taken direction from this year to take a look at the cost of the dependent coverage on the health insurance in particular, and see if we could find ways to get that cost down somewhat, make it more affordable for the town's employees who cover their dependents. On the screen, for a baseline in light blue, is the health insurance cost that we have currently for 2022. It's from Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. Above it is the enrollment that we have for October 2022. We have a total of 74 employees enrolled. 66 are not covering dependents. They have employee-only coverage. 1 employee is covering a spouse. 6 employees are covering a child or more than 1 child. And 1 employee is covering family, a spouse and children. And these small numbers of enrollment or small numbers of employees that are covering family members is an indication of the high cost of the coverage. Otherwise, we would see more enrollment in the employee spouse, employee children, and family enrollment tiers. Shown for our current year is the cost of the insurance itself from Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's in the premium row. Then the cost that the employees pay, we are looking at monthly costs on this presentation, though the employee's cost is divided up among 24 pay periods over the course of the year. And then also the town's cost in a monthly amount shown in the employer contribution row. For our current year, we can see that the town contributes $496.88 to each employee's health insurance enrollment, regardless of whether they cover dependents or not. And the same pattern is shown in the light yellow section, which is the cost of the insurance without any benefit changes. This is the Blue Cross and health insurance that we have currently, with the increased cost that Blue Cross has assigned to it for the coming year. The increased cost has been reviewed and verified by independent benefit advisors, our firm, and we can substantiate and recommend this renewal. It represents an 8.8% increase in premium billed, and 9.7% of that increase falls to the town. 2.5% of that increase falls to the employees that are covering dependents. The town would increase the contribution from the current $496.88 per employee per month to $545.12 per employee per month. To address the concern of affordability for the health plan, we propose the green option shown on this chart. These are just the costs. It represents an additional option that employees could choose voluntarily to enroll in, because it would represent a lower cost coverage for their dependents. We do not expect that any employee who does not cover dependents would enroll in this coverage. We do show the cost for employee only in green. We just don't anticipate that there would be any enrollment in that category. The way that the cost is made more affordable is we're just simply buying less insurance benefit from the insurance company. And that is then shown in the premium column, or excuse me, the premium row. And you'll notice that in each column, the premium for the green option, which we call dual option plan B, is lower than the premium for the light orange section, dual option plan A. Furthermore, we leverage the town's generous funding for the employee-only cost, the employer contribution of $545.12 toward the lower cost green plan to further make the dual option plan B more affordable for employees. And it does make a substantial difference. The combination of the lower premium and the town's generous contribution for the proposed dual option plan B decreases the cost for employees to cover dependents by 16.8%. Important to note about the layout of this chart is just that if you looked at it and added up the annual totals for employer contribution for the Plan A and the employer contribution annual total for Plan B, it would look like that the town would spend close to $1 million for the health plan for 2023. In fact, that's double counting. We assume in both the Plan A and Plan B presentation that all of the employees enroll in Plan A and then all of the employees enroll in Plan B. That will not be the case, however, but it does produce in this chart double counting, and I just mentioned that so that nobody misinterprets the annual totals to the town. If there are no questions about this chart, then Lisa, did you want to speak about the next slide?
What this slide is showing is the employee contribution when it comes to the negotiated or Plan A renewal for 2023, the Delta Dental and Superior Vision. There are no changes to the cost for Delta Dental or Superior Vision. but it shows that, the cost for a family with the 2023 Plan A would be $1,239.13. $80 for Delta Dental, and Superior Vision would be $1,548. When you look at the positions in the second chart, an equipment operator 2 that's making $41,500, the yearly cost for a family for just on medical would be $14,869, or 35.8% of their salary. The director that's making $83,000, it would be 17.9% of their salary. If they choose to do the family coverage for health, dental, and vision, the total cost would be $16,015, or 38.6% for the equipment operator 2 and 19.3% for the director. So as you can see, the costs are somewhat prohibitive for someone to be able to cover their whole family with the insurance that we are currently offering. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. As we mentioned about the dual option health plan that we proposed for 2023, it's the employee's choice whether to enroll in the Plan A or the Plan B. We know that the Plan B costs less and is attractive in that way. We also need to know why it costs less, and that is because we're buying less insurance benefit with Plan B, and the differences in benefit between Plan A and Plan B are shown on this chart. There are only 5 categories of benefit difference between Plan A and Plan B. All other benefits of the health insurance between Plan A and Plan B are equal, except for these 5 categories shown. We'll start with the first category. It's the annual deductible. Although the Plan B annual deductible looks like a higher dollar amount, like that might be something good, in fact it is not a better benefit, but rather it's a higher threshold that an employee must pay out of pocket before the insurance benefit begins to pay. It is $2,500 compared to the individual deductible on the Plan A, which is $1,000. The second deductible amount shown for the family is actually a protection. When a family pays out $2,000 on Plan A or $5,000 on Plan B in the form of deductible dollars, the family pays no more deductible for the remainder of the year for any family members, and that is a ceiling protection. Similarly, the out-of-pocket maximum shown on the second row is a ceiling, a protection for employees and their families. The most that an employee would ever pay in a catastrophically expensive year on Plan A is $3,000 for employee only, and on Plan B, $5,000. While a significant amount of money, it is an amazing amount of protections considering how expensive medical episodes can be in this day and age. A family would pay no more than $6,000 total out of pocket for all family members' expenses on Plan A, and $10,000 for all family members' expenses on Plan B. That includes all deductibles, percentages, which we call coinsurance, and copayments for various services like doctors, drugs, and emergency services. The other 3 categories of benefit difference are all in the prescription drug benefit. We have shown their prescription drug Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1 represents, generally speaking, the least expensive generic drugs. Tier 2 represent more expensive generic drugs and some inexpensive brand name drugs. Tier 3 are your regular brand name drugs that are modestly expensive, and the copayments for them on Plan A are $10 for Tier 1 for a month's supply, $35 for Tier 2, and $60 for Tier 3. On the proposed Plan B, the copayments are noticeably higher, $20 for Tier 1, $40 for Tier 2, and $75 for Tier 3. These 5 benefit categories and the changes between the current benefits that we show for Plan A and the proposed dual option Plan B are enough to generate that meaningful premium or contribution savings for employees of over 16% that we looked at on previous slides. They're also, by being limited to these 5 categories, easy for the employees to digest because they are the ones who are going to be evaluating whether the increased risk of out-of-pocket costs is worth it to them and their family for the decreased paycheck deductions to pay for the plan. It is surprising how well employees will be able to intuitively choose whether to continue with the higher benefits and the higher paycheck deductions for Plan A, or the lower paycheck deductions but the higher out-of-pocket potential for Plan B. They know their family best. We help them appreciate the insurance benefits and educate them during open enrollment so that they can make an informed decision, and it's completely their choice. And that extra flexibility, that extra freedom, this new option to help them save money should be very well received by employees. Are there any questions about the benefit differences? Yes, please.
Yeah, so the total difference for.
And I'm sorry, can you speak into your mic?
Yeah. Can. So for the total difference for Plan A and Plan B for a family is about $2,400, a little bit less.
Yes, it is.
So in that $2,400, if they choose to get the Plan B, they're going to be responsible for $3,000 more per family as far as the deductible, as well as $4,000 more towards the family maximum.
Yes, in a worst case scenario, that's true.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
So what we are proposing is that we go with the dual plans with offering options A and B, which means we would also include Delta Dental, Vision, Hartford, as they have not changed at all in cost, and we would continue to offer those. And by going with the dual plan for options A and B for Blue Cross and Blue Shield health benefits, that offers the lower alternative for dependent care. This is the schedule that is before us. One of the reasons we opted to have Paul share more in depth with this presentation prior to tonight was to give you the opportunity to know what the ins and outs were that were being offered so that we could bring it to you and a decision could be made tonight. If that occurs, then we would do a signed contract with Blue Cross and Blue Shield and get it to them tomorrow. We would be able to do open enrollment beginning tomorrow for 2 weeks. Open enrollment would close on December 2nd. We would be able to allow for IBA to pull all information together and data and then transfer that information to the various insurance companies on the 7th. By doing this, we would be able to provide paper copies of insurance cards to the employees by January 1. If, however, you choose not to make a decision this evening, we would have to call a special, we would have to have a special called meeting by November 30th so that the board could make a decision. This would be needed because Blue Cross and Blue Shield has to have a signed contract in hand by December 1st. Once that is provided to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, we could have open enrollment beginning December 1st. It would go for 2 weeks and close on December 15th. The data would be transferred to the insurance companies on the 20th. Digital insurance cards would be available by January 1st, and paper cards would be available somewhere mid to late January at best. questions?
Mayor, that concludes staff's presentation. We're open for any questions the board may have. Again, we're seeking a board decision preferably tonight.
We're opening it up for discussion with the board members. We'll start with Commissioner Laux.
I'm very happy with the plan as presented.
Commissioner Harrison.
Same.
Clark.
Same.
Commissioner Miles.
I second it. Same.
Commissioner Baxter.
I don't have any comments.
Can you make a motion?
So there a motion to approve the proposal for the insurance renewal.
I make a motion to approve the renewal of the insurance.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Discussion. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Baxter,
Aye.
Commissioner Miles,
Favor.
Commissioner Clark,
Favor.
Commissioner Harrison,
Favor.
Commissioner Laux.
In favor.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Your next presentation, we will revisit briefly. You need to stay here. We'll revisit briefly part of the presentation that was given to you by Deputy County Manager on your work session on April 21st, 2022. And then we will roll into the specifics or talk to you about the funding agreement that we received from Wake County. Again, this is another item we're seeking board decision on. The decision is on whether to accept the agreement with Wake County for the funds that they will use to support the recruitment and retention incentives. So very briefly, this is just a repeat of what was presented at that work session. You heard from the Deputy County Manager, Ashley Jacobs, where she was discussing how the stress and the strain, particularly of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as in a competitive job market, they were experiencing a lot of turnover, and they were seeing employees leave for higher wages and lighter workloads, in also a context that employees were facing higher costs from rising inflation and higher costs from housing. They implemented, at that time, they had already made their first distribution to employees by the time they made this presentation. They have subsequently made a second distribution, and in the month of December, they will make a third distribution. They modeled this off of Wake County school system. The city of Raleigh has also recently enacted a similar incentive program, but the presentation that you heard in April was just detailing the costs of what was happening with the turnover of their employees. The turnover cost that they calculated was $76 million. This was due in large part because the average vacancy of over 6 months. And in particular, they were seeing many firefighters not stay in their jobs for more than 3 years. The reason for those firefighters leaving was they were leaving for positions or organizations that had a career ladder, which you have, by the way, for better pay, which you have recently improved dramatically. They are also looking to work at stations with more service calls, but some have left the profession altogether. And for those reasons, Wake County extended the offer of their incentives to those cost share fire departments, meaning those fire departments that were part of municipalities, but they were providing service to the county for those residents who live within Wake County, but outside the town limits, in this case, the town of Zebulon. They went on to provide greater detail about the drivers of inflation. They highlighted some of the escalations related to transportation, food and beverage, and housing. And then they talked about their total compensation about how they are compensating employees. I bring this up not only as a reminder, but also to give you some insight of some things that you will hear about in the FY24 budget, some of these things that you have already done. So as an example, if you look to the bottom right, performance pay, that's something that you already employ. The amount of increase that an employee gets at their performance evaluation is based upon their performance. So that's something that you are already incorporating. You are also, let me see, the sign-on referral bonus, that is something that I suspect you are going to see. We are finding it harder to recruit for some positions, and much like in Wake County, we may have to start offering this. So I bring this before you not only as a repeat of something you heard before, but as something you may hear about more as we get into the development of the FY24 budget. So as far as what we are doing at the town of Zebulon, again, this is the Wake County's model or system incentive package was modeled after Wake County Public School System. Again, the city of Raleigh has recently adopted a similar model. Wake County distributed allotments in March, August, and December. The way that they approached it was employees hired after February 1st who had not already received a multi-year sign-on bonus would receive a retention incentive of $1,000 in December. When you passed the budget, you did not pass the budget of the full $4,000, but you did pass budget for $2,000, and you made it available to all employees. The contract that's before you tonight that we're asking for a decision on is to recognize what will amount to a little bit less than $34,000 from Wake County. The way we plan to roll this out is the first disbursement will be next week in advance of Black Friday, as an example. For anyone who was hired before February 1st, they'll receive the full $2,000. Anyone who was hired in the window after February 1st, but before the end of this month, will receive $500, assuming they did not receive a sign-on bonus, and we have not issued any sign-on bonuses to anybody. And then for the remaining disbursements, those are for those that did not receive the $2,000, they'll receive an additional $500 if they're still with us through the end of March, and they'll receive the final $1,000 if they're still with us through the end of June, which is also the end of the fiscal year. And so again, our recommendation is to adopt the Wake County Retention Incentive Funding Agreement that's in front of you. We stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from any of the board? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve the Wake County Retention Incentive Funding Agreement?
I make a motion that we adopt the Wake County Retention Incentive Funding Agreement.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Commissioner Laux.
In favor?
Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Clark.
Favor?
Commissioner Miles.
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter.
Favor.
Passes.
You commissioners.
Next, special event standards.
Sir, the next topic is a topic that was tabled by the board at their regular meeting. We have not made any modifications to that. We have received some additional information, part of which we have included in your agenda packet. We again stand ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Do we still need to ask for board consensus about the balloon release verbiage?
Yes, if y'all would like to have that included when you make a motion to adopt the special event standards, you would want to include the verbiage for the balloon and lantern, paper lantern release as well.
Is there anyone that disagrees with that verbiage? Okay.
Any other comments? Commissioner Miles?
Correct. I'm not sure if everybody had a chance to take a look at the notes that I put that's in the agenda. I'm not sure if you guys
I
have seen
can't
that.
hear you.
Talking to fellow commissioners, I said if they had an opportunity to view some of the notes that I placed that are placed in the agenda, some of the things I took a look at.
Any questions, comments?
I'll read something that I wrote as well.
Commissioner Miles?
I'll read something that I wrote. Go ahead.
Could you just tell me what page they started on?
Well, pretty much what it is, and all that you're seeing now.
All that.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
The stuff that I kind of recommended, kind of put in there, not just myself, but a series of people who went through it, took a look at it.
Okay,
kind of says
but could you just, did you?
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Yes, if you look at the very first page, it'll tell you how to read it, Sharon. Very first page.
All right.
Miles,
sorry.
can you speak into the mic as well? I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time.
You find that chart?
Yeah, I did. Thanks.
Okay, since I've tabled this item at the last board meeting, before I get into what I would like to see as our next step, I would like to first thank Sheila and her team. This really isn't an easy task, and I appreciate the hours of hard work you all have put forth. I believe the draft proposal is a very thorough document and terrific start, and I appreciate you giving the board the opportunity to review the draft and provide feedback. With that said, I reviewed the document and also took the liberty of having a small group of folks that included writers, editors, teachers, review just for extra eyes to catch grammatical issues. In doing so, other concerns were raised, and this took on a life of its own. As you can see in the notes from the agenda, from here, I would like to have Sheila and the crew and her team work their magic and rework the current draft, addressing all concerns, and submit another draft for consideration. And in the interim, when folks approach the town to host a special event, we use those opportunities to test out the draft. Thank you.
My question.
Senator Baxter?
My question is, you have these, I'm not quite sure with everything that you've got going on. So for proof of notification form, you have highlighted enter event name here. What is the problem with?
Speak into the mic, please.
Usually I don't have this problem. Maybe this isn't on. I mean, I don't know. Have you turned this down on me? So,
Go ahead.
like, could you go through like what your issues are? Because I've seen where they've been highlighted. I'm just not sure like what you're looking to see.
To sit in discussion now, there's a series. If you kind of go through the sheets, there actually was 3 different sheets that I sent. That's why I'm saying that we really kind of sit back and do it. It could almost do a work session within itself just to get it right. My thing is written now, but I want to make sure we get it as right as possible as what the town needs currently now as we move forward. So I would gladly sit down with you and kind of go through it. To go through each phase right there will be all night. We'll have no problem with that.
So what are you then looking for tonight? For
That
this
we-
to be tabled again?
Correct. And I just stated what it was. She'd come back with a draft, take those suggestions, come back with a different draft, and we'll move forward from there.
Sheila, how is that going to affect anything that we have coming down the pipeline? Would it be in the town's best interest for us to approve the policy with the addition of the balloon release verbiage now and then set aside time for us to go over this in the future? Could you just explain what your thoughts are a little bit?
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. We currently have an 8K, St. Patrick's Day, Juneteenth, and the possibility of a second St. Patrick's Day event that have all, in some form or fashion, have already been in contact with us. We have operated with using existing processes and relying off of your board schedule to kind of work through a schedule to work with applicants that are interested, but there isn't a very clear guidance. And so if you were to delay this document, it still leaves us in that no man's land, in that gray area, where there's some expectation and assumption that staff has authority that we do not. We collect information and we provide guidance to the board so that you can make an informed decision, because it's your decision to close streets. It's your decision to close public space. And so our role in this is purely to help you. And this document has been developed with that in mind, so that staff's not making the decision whether or not an event moves forward. It still stays with the board. I'm not exactly sure how you could implement this on an interim basis, because there are deadlines for the board. And if it's not adopted by the board, and those things are in place, I'm not exactly sure how we enforce that. So if you want to use it on an interim basis, my recommendation would be that you adopt it and you can see how it goes and we could revisit it. I also think that there are an awful lot of wonderful projects on board, and you've only got one set of Commissioner Miles' comments. There were 2 additional. One I was unable to open. The third I got late yesterday, so I haven't even had a chance to look and see if I could open that one. So I couldn't tell you what those involve and the amount of work that it would take to address those, nor do I know if that's the will of the board. So I think that's really a decision for the board. I think you need something to move you forward, because otherwise staff is continuing to put in a difficult position, community members continue to be put in a difficult position, and even you do, because you don't have something to go off of.
Well, I certainly need more time, because I was unsure how this needed to be read in order to be digested. There was asterisks, but not like it didn't refer to specific areas. And I want to make sure that, at least for right now, folks can start down the road with, like a set of expectations from what the town is expecting. And then I don't mind either just sitting down on an individual basis to talk about this, or if we do another work session to just kind of dig through this. But I'm certainly not ready to address the individual things right now without looking at it and understanding it a little bit more.
I'd be ready to make a motion. But you want discussion?
Speaking to the
You
mic.
want discussion? I don't have anything to discuss. I think we have had this presented to us, and I think we should go ahead and adopt the one that is presented by Sheila, along with the change of balloon and paper lanterns added to it.
There are some typos and clerical errors. I mean, that really do need to be
I'm sure.
addressed, but I would love for us to be able to do it and sit down as a group to look at it.
Commissioner Harrison?
I think that what we have is a very good overall framework of what we need, and I think that we need something. So I am ready to move forward with approving this, so that the staff as well as the community can have, as well as us, can have some standards. But I am also open to continuing to look at it. But I think we need something so that we're not continuing to be liable for people knowing.
Commissioner Laux?
Comments. I would agree with adding the restrictions on the balloons, but I'd also add the candle-powered or fire-powered lanterns, which are fire hazards, which I've seen released a lot lately. And then I think this framework is very well. Possibly Park and Recs could incorporate some of these tweaks into another version of this that we could adopt at a later time, but we could adopt this one tonight as a starting point.
Commissioner Miles?
My question is, we continue to pass things saying, okay, we can tweak it. At what point do we take the citizens into consideration and give them a complete document? We continue adopting things saying, okay, we can tweak it. It's a living document. At what point do we sit back and say, okay, let's get something right from the start before we give it to the citizens? We continue, like I say, being friendly, I've seen a document, a policy put in place where it can either hurt certain groups of people or it can move forward or whatever it may be. I just feel as if we need to get something right. Not continue, it's a living document. We change it each and every time, or we're going to adjust it later on. As we see later on, never comes about because we have so much coming our way. So I find it very important that we get it right the first time. And if too much, we don't have anything in place now. We haven't had it since Zebulon been established. So what is another couple of months going to hurt us to get it right now?
Commissioner Baxter?
Agree that it's always good to get it right the first time. I really do. I agree with that. But I also want to make sure that we are moving forward in a time where we have got more of these private events coming online, that they at least have a framework to work off of. And if we commit as a board to revisit this, then it's not going to get pushed off indefinitely, and we'll be able to come back and review this. But I want to make sure that if Sheila wants to move forward and if folks are coming in with races and events, that they can know like what some of the expectations are instead of not having any set expectations, because I think that would be actually worse for the citizens, because we're not protecting them by giving structure to these event organizers. You know, like I want the town in general, and as, you know, as much of a whole as we can get, I want those citizens to be protected. And I think the best way is to make sure that like a general tier 2 event, you know, has to have fewer than 500 people. Otherwise it's going to be a different tier. Because if we don't have something like that in place, we could be expecting 500 people at an event and have 2,500 show up, and then it becomes a safety concern as well as, you know, who's going to be taking care of the trash? Do we have enough porta potties? Do we have, you know, like fire and EMS and the staff that we need? And this document kind of puts some of those expectations in place. But I agree, there's absolutely things that need to be improved in this document. I don't disagree with that.
I mean, for me, excuse me, Commissioner Clark?
I think we're ready to move with this one.
Commissioner Miles?
I just say for me, I put it out there again. I think we start getting things right from the start. It's going to be benefit. We're setting the pace now for the new Zebulon that is to come. We continue to pass things that say, okay, we'll go back and address it later on. I just don't feel that warm and fuzzy. It's continued. The last few things, we did the budget like that. We've done other documents like that. We'll get it later on. We have not addressed any of those things that we were going to do later on. They're never coming about. We're so busy. We're growing so fast that if we don't get it right from the start, it's hard for it to come back before us. That's from your budget. That's from, those are the things that pop in my mind, just the budget first and foremost. It's a living document. We continue to say that. But I think we can get some of those things right from the start. It's just key right now.
Commissioner Lawrence?
You know, I appreciate your concerns and I agree with you, but possibly between now and January, you could meet with each one of us individually to address this item by item, and then let's get this right in January for any revisions we need to make.
Okay.
In other words, let's put a time deadline on it.
Tracking with that.
Commissioner Clark?
We have our staff here, and they do the job they're to do. And I think sometimes I don't see where we have to go through every little thing and make it so much, find so many things wrong. I understand
I don't think
with some of the stuff, but I just think it's time that we, take what our staff gives us, work with it, and if it doesn't, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Commissioner Miles?
I'm not taking anything for what staff is doing. I know this is not an easy document for Sheila and her crew. I have no idea, no doubt of that. I'm just saying that we have our fiduciary duties to make sure that what the citizens are getting is just what they deserve. And at time frame, we hire somebody to write grants, we hire somebody to do assessments. Policy writers, I don't think we have a policy writer on staff. So me taking the initiative to kind of get with writers, editors, and do that, it's just that we have to get it right from the start. And like I said, I'm not trying to take anything for what's already been established. It's just trying to get it as close as what the town needs now as we move forward.
Commissioner Baxter?
I do think that this needs to be addressed and tweaked, that there's inconsistencies with language throughout here. For example, in some areas, event planner is referenced, in others it's event organizer. It should be the same throughout, just for consistency's sake. There are some grammatical errors, there are a couple of spelling errors. The document does need to be reviewed a little bit better. You know, sometimes things are copied and pasted from other documents because those other documents seem to work, you know, if they're from, you know, other municipalities or other places. But I think maybe this document was pulled together from a couple different municipalities, and so things just aren't consistently referenced. And so it would be good for us to go back and look at it. But I think that we need to start with some, we have to have something in place and then address it, you know, because I think between right now and January, when we meet back again to talk about this, we will probably have at least one other event talking to Parks and Rec about how to get started.
May I?
Sure.
If there are words that need to be interchanged, like planner versus organizer, or if there's a spelling error that's found, those are immaterial things that we can edit. So I'm happy to do that. You know, if you notice something in anything that we have, I'm happy to do that.
Commissioner Miles?
Well, if we move forward, if the board feels that we're going to move forward, my recommendation is that we take a look, and like I said, go back and assess it, what's been given that I've submitted to Park and Rec Director, and kind of go from there. And we do take a look at it in the future. But I personally, like I said, I personally don't feel comfortable moving forward with it right now. Like I said, with the grammar, it's not even about the grammar. That's not even what I'm focusing on. Look, some of those policies and things in place, it was geared to municipalities that are bigger than what we are, and they have a set unit that totally just handles events. We're not there yet. So we really need to cater this document to what Zebulon, the citizens of Zebulon need, not what based off other municipalities. We set the pace for our own town, not based off whatever other municipalities have set and done. We set the pace for us. It's key. It's key right now. Like I said, we continue to pass things and coming back later on. We can get it right now. 2 months. Zebulon's been established since 1907. We didn't have anything in place then. I grew up in this place, a town that didn't have anything in place then. 2 more months or whatever it is to get it right, it's not going to hurt us. It's not going to hurt us. What do we have now? What do we have prior to starting private partnerships with the citizens? What do we have in place now? We will make and do then. Another couple of months to get it right will not hurt us.
Any other questions, comments?
Your thoughts that waiting 2 months, does this document provide the town additional protection to where it could potentially keep us and the citizens safer or more exempt from litigation if we have it in place?
I believe having a standard that is consistent for everyone is always, and Eric may have something to add to that from a legal perspective, is always going to put the town in a more protected state. It's also provides consistency, and I hear waiting 2 months, but it's not just waiting 2 months. We've been working on this. I first provided a copy in August. And even since that, I mean, we've experienced issues where staff is put in a very difficult position because there isn't a standard, there isn't a policy. And so there are community members that are led to believe that certain things can happen that aren't necessarily true. And so that, again, puts the community in a difficult position, and it puts staff in a difficult position, and it puts you in a difficult position. And I don't know if Eric wants to add to that.
Have your policy in place.
Commissioner Miles?
Policy in place, I think is key. That's something that's accurate, what the town needs now. We need it set right from the start. You as a lawyer, you say that town needs a policy in place. You know that if the document is not correct, I mean, from the start, it sets the tempo because that leaves room for error. I just think it's key that we pass something that's correct from the start, not that we use the scenario. It's a living document. We come back and change it. We get it right from the start. We set the pace now for the Zebulon that is to come. With these citizens that are coming in, they're looking at policies. I had new citizens look at it, old Zebulonians look at it. It was a little bit, I want to make sure when that 21-year-old goes in to rent the community center or have an event downtown, he or she can understand it from the beginning, not having to have someone else go and interpret it to them what it's supposed to be. And I think we can do that. And I think we owe that to the citizens.
Any other questions, comments? I guess at this point, we need some type of motion. The Commissioner Laux, you had mentioned returning.
Yeah, I can make a motion that we adopt this as presented to us with the understanding we would like to have it brought back in January with corrections noted. And I also made a little note here, I'd like to see a flow chart or a little checkoff sheet so the event organizer kind of has a sequence or process to follow versus going back to reading verbiage all the time, because you can go back and read the verbiage, but a check sheet or something is really nice so you can say, it's done, it's done, it's done. Just makes it easier for an event organizer.
Can you tighten up that motion, and will you
Yeah.
will you
It's a discussion.
I had a,
Motion that we adopt the event, special event policies presented tonight.
Add the verbiage.
We add verbiage on restricting balloons and any heat or fire-powered lanterns, and that we bring this back in January for a further review with possible inclusion of a flow chart or a check sheet to assist the event organizer.
And I think also make sure that, go ahead, please.
well, I was going to say to include.
Second.
To include the documents that I've been,
Yeah.
everything that's been sent, the 3 documents that's been sent to Park and Rec, please include that.
Yeah, that would kind of be a given because that's what we're going to follow.
Sounds good.
Commissioner Clark, you had a comment?
No, no. Was there a second?
Bunch of seconds.
Okay, go for it.
Any more discussion before the second?
A second.
There's already a second?
Yeah, Commissioner
Okay,
Baxter
Commissioner
seconded
Baxter
the
sec-
motion.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Before we move forward and vote, I just want Sheila and her staff to know that I do appreciate and I understand everything that's been done. I understand it's hard work, but I do not take from that at all. I want that to be established for the record that I understand. I personally want to make sure that as we move forward for the town of Zebulon, that these citizens are given what the document needs from the beginning, where we continue to stop passing things that are living documents. That's all I'm looking for here. That's nothing towards your department at all. I just want to make sure that we get it right the first time. Thank you.
Any other discussion? At this time, I'll call for a roll vote. starting with Commissioner Harrison. Commissioner Clark. Commissioner Baxter. Commissioner Miles.
In favor.
Motion passes. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was your vote?
Oh,
I'm like, I'm confused.
Favor.
You made the motion, I guess.
he made the, okay. Commissioner Laux.
In favor.
Thank you.
Commissioner Miles, how did you vote?
Favor,
In favor, okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
unanimous.
Commissioners.
Thank you. Next is the Main Street Program organizational structure.
Mayor, you will remember that in September, we had Department of Commerce come out and discuss, and I have just messed them up. Remember from a presentation in September, we had Department of Commerce representatives come out and they discussed briefly a broad overview of the different types of organizational models that different communities pursue when they are entering the Main Street program. Picking an organizational model is your final step before you become fully vetted and a full member in the Main Street program. Mike Clark, your planning director, is here tonight to revisit the models that were presented. It will be a brief summary, but he's also going to engage you in a participation to get some feedback from you on what might be the best type of model for Zebulon. With that, I'll recognize Mike Clark.
And Mike, before we start, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
scares me that everybody's going to be super hyper-focused on this as opposed to thinking
Yeah,
of
that's-
restroom breaks. And
Promises, Mike. No, just kidding.
at least it's not the first presentation after lunch.
That's true.
Reconvene. Mike?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we're going to, as Joe mentioned, rediscuss some of the options as it pertains to the organizational structure. As you heard at the last presentation, there's three overarching concepts that you could be approached: quasi-public, city department, or one of the other non-for-profit. And within the non-for-profit classification, there are typically three different options that are being used here in North Carolina. Right now, there's 32 municipalities that use the quasi-public, which is a combination of the city department as well as one of the non-for-profit options, and then 22 that are a city department. It is worth noting that some of those are converting into other models, primarily the quasi-public model. That's why the asterisk is on there. Of those, the funding sources do span different options. The quasi-public, 17 of those have an MSD or thank you, Municipal Service District. It's been kind of a long week. What that is it's an opportunity for folks to participate financially within a given geographic area where those funds are dedicated specifically to a particular activity. In this case, it'd be funding the Main Street program. 7 are within a city department, which the primary focus of the city department is the municipality is covering all of the costs with the exception of those 7. Within the other structures, a 501c6 does not have any that are currently in the have an MSD, and only one municipality within North Carolina has one. The most popular of the non-for-profit is the 501c3. As you heard previously, that is a tax-exempt option, but there are some limitations on that in terms of how they engage, how they fundraise, those type of things. Going into further detail, the quasi-public is a combination of the non-for-profit as well as the city departments. So what this would look like is the town board would hire the director or some other individual to oversee it. Main Street program requires that person has the title of director, but would not operate necessarily as the same as a department head type director within a municipality. They're typically the director of the organization as opposed to a department. The director is the liaison, however, between the town and the North Carolina Main Street program. Specifically, there'd be a board that would be initially appointed, and then depending upon how that board is structured, frequently they hold their own elections or reappoint vacancies and such. But the Main Street board plans and implements the objectives for the organization as it moves forward. That board is frequently made up of property owners and business owners within the given geographic area. Our great geographic area is primarily the businesses along North Arundel, from approximately where the railroad tracks start heading north to just north of Sycamore, and they do go into some of the side streets, approximately half a block or so. It doesn't extend into the full overlay district. It is smaller than those boundaries. With the city department, on the other hand, much like the quasi-public or quasi-option, the town board hires the director. In this case, it would become a staff person within one of the departments, so the HR director would essentially hire that individual. And then the board will make advisory appointments. It'd be a similar setup to how you currently populate the Board of Adjustment or the Planning Board or the Parks and Recreation Board. This would create a fourth entity, and they would be a recommendation-only body. Similar to those others, with the exception of the Board of Adjustment, they don't actually have any decision-making authority or power. That would then come back before you as agenda items at your regular meeting with their recommendations. The non-for-profit organization models takes the town essentially out of the equation. They control the operations of the organization, as well as the non-for-profit hires the director. So in that scenario, it is solely the business owners and the property owners that operate the program. Each of them do have some strengths. The quasi-public-private creates that partnership between the business owners, property owners, and the town, and helps to navigate through the different incentives and opportunities that the North Carolina Main Street offers. And then it shares the benefits as well as the costs. As I noted, MSDs are very popular with this model, so they're the ones that are out there helping to fill these vacancies, bringing in additional funding, in addition to sometimes the MSDs, depending upon how that is structured, if it's a 501c3 or a 501c4. It does provide a town employee, somebody who is well-versed in this particular subject, to oversee the program and act as that liaison between the board, the Main Street Board, as well as the town. It also creates greater flexibility in decision-making for purchases. This is important when it comes to land acquisition and sale. North Carolina General Statute has a very defined process for when a town sells land. It's not just something that can be done arbitrarily, but there's a full detailed process that is outlined. When it's owned by a 501c3 or a 501c4, on the other hand, it creates much more leniency in terms of what can be applied to bring that building up to code, as well as the sale of that building, and then how those funds are recouped to go back into such as a revolving fund for rehabilitation of these structures. With a city version, it creates the ultimate financial stability because everything is in-house. The town takes the lead on planning the organization and how it is implemented, whereas the non-for-profit creates a clear division between the governmental organization and a volunteer-run organization. This empowers the business owners to the fullest extent, but does not really encourage as much town involvement in it. Finally, it does create partnership opportunities with other non-for-profit organizations, as well as for particular events with the municipality if the streets have to be closed and such. Finally, is the most flexible in the decision-making because a non-for-profit organization that can act totally independent will be able to move and pivot a lot sooner and a lot quicker on major items as opposed to a municipality. Much like each of these have strengths, they all do have challenges. With the quasi-public, it's seen as a town employee sometimes. It's not necessarily an individual that invokes the same level of confidence that they're working for the board, but they're still a town employee. There's sometimes concerns with government leadership and turnover. Having a board that is separate from the appointed boards doesn't always stay fully staffed, and sometimes they have difficulty filling their own board. Additionally, sometimes there's concerns about how a government organization will be directing that town employee to operate. It does create less flexibility than the not-for-profit because there are certain things that governments have to follow based on standard operating procedures, as well as state statutes, as well as our own local regulations. When it's a city fully run, there's historically less buy-in from the stakeholders and volunteers. They see this as another municipal operation, so they're less likely to be engaged because they don't have that same level of buy-in or commitment as opposed to the other options. And that the attitude is that the town will just take care of it all, that everything's just going to be covered in the town budgets. And finally, it does create the less flexibility in decision-making because we have to follow all those statutory requirements, especially when we're selling land. The not-for-profit, the biggest concern with those is funding. Frequently, when they're totally independent of a municipality, it's hard to get those funding sources and that continuous revenue. As we see for a lot of not-for-profit organizations, especially coming out of COVID, a lot of their funding sources were no longer operating. This creates organizational instability. And I take the chamber as a great example. When COVID happened, a lot of their funding sources stopped, and their executive director, as well as the staff, left. And so the chamber is in the process of rebuilding that organization. That's consistent with a lot of other non-for-profits that actually have hired staff that were not long established. Over time, they can become established once that funding gets locked in, especially if there's an MSD involved. For a startup, the organizational instability is difficult. This is where we're going to have a bit more fun. Lisa's going to be handing out QR codes for each of you. And we have a series of questions. If you can scan these with your phone,
I just scan it for me.
see if it still has me logged in from earlier.
Scan that.
Get your
Phone up.
your camera.
Thank you.
I've tried those before.
No.
Never gonna touch it.
No,
that.
touch that.
Okay, there's going to be a series of questions that'll be coming up. And if you can answer each of the questions, and what'll happen is on the screen, once you answer the question, it'll actually populate. So we'll go to the first question, and I ask that you stay with each of the questions as we go through these one by one, because we're going to talk about them after the voting. The first question is, to meet the criteria of the Main Street program, the organization should, and the options are, receive all of its funding from the town, receive a portion of its funding from the town, or receive no direct funding from the town. Did everybody have an opportunity to vote?
All of them?
Just for the one.
Okay.
I'm on number 3.
I was on 9.
Hold on, going to the next ones.
We need clear direction.
During this practice one, a particular director, not saying which one, finance, decided to go through and select them all. Okay, so for the first one, 100% of you indicated that a mixed of funding between private and profit, or not-for-profit organizations, or sorry, public and government organizations would fund the program. Okay, question number 2. To meet the criteria of the Main Street program, the organization should encourage donations and provide tax credits to individuals and organizations supporting the program, encourage donations, but not provide tax credits to individuals and organizations supporting the program. The town should not encourage contributions to support the program through the general fund. Give everybody a moment here to vote. And yes, you can only vote once. Did everybody have an opportunity? Okay, so this one was split. A third of you indicated encourage donations but not provide tax credits to individuals and organizations to support the program. And then 2/3 of you encourage donations and provide tax credits to individuals supporting the program. Okay, going on to 3. And thank you for not voting on 3, by the way. To meet the criteria of the Main Street program, day-to-day operations of the program are best met by the town department and staff, an independent organization, or a town liaison and stakeholders. Okay, I think everybody voted. The overwhelming majority indicated they would like to see a town liaison and stakeholder operation. It looks like, if my math is correct, one person did indicate an independent organization. The town liaison and stakeholder would be that quasi-public or public nonprofit model. So in this situation, it would be a town staff operating as director, and then a separate board of the stakeholders. Okay, question number 4. To meet the goals of the Main Street program, who should set policy and priorities for the program? The stakeholders, the directors, or a combination of the stakeholders and town liaison? Okay, once again, I think everybody's voted. Once again, the majority indicated a combination of the stakeholders in town liaison. Once again, that is typical of that quasi-public platform where staff, or a particular town staff person, as well as the Main Street Board. Question number 5, to meet the goals of the Main Street program, the town should establish advisory group or similar to planning board or board of adjustment, participate as a liaison in a stakeholder-led organization, not provide town staff or liaison to the organization. Okay, this one was a little closer. I think everybody's voted. A third of you indicated that establish a board similar to the planning board or a board of adjustment. That'd be more of the city model, whereas the second option received 2/3 of the votes to participate as a liaison to a stakeholder-led organization. Once again, that'd be the quasi model. Question number 6, to meet the goals of the Main Street program, the town should provide staff to carry out all aspects of the plan, rely on an independent organization to carry out the plan, or provide staff liaison to work with stakeholders to carry out the plan. Okay, it looks like everybody has voted on this one. That one's pretty clear. Everybody indicated that they want to provide a staff liaison to work with the stakeholders. And that's typical for a lot of these quasi, where the director kind of acts as a conductor, and the instruments are the citizens, primarily with business owners within the organization coming to go forward to really fulfill the roles of the different elements of the 4-point approach with the Main Street. The staff doesn't do 100% of it, but they act as the kind of the glue that connects everybody together. Question number 7. To meet the goals of the Main Street program, the organization is structured to operate independently as an established policy and develop and carry out an action plan, carry out the action plan as established by the town and carry it out by staff, have stakeholders and volunteers work with the town liaison to carry out the action plan. All right, I think everybody's voted on this one. Once again, very clear. The choice that you've selected is typical with the quasi model to have a town liaison work with volunteers to execute the action plan. Two left. To meet the goals of the Main Street program, the director should be employed independently by the organization, be employed by the town to serve as a liaison between the town and the organization, be employed as a town staff member whereby the department carries all the aspects of the program. Bless you. It looks like everybody's voted. One member, it looks like, voted employed independently by an organization. That would be consistent with the full non-for-profit models, where it's their board hires somebody to execute and run the organization. The majority, however, selected employed by the town to serve as a liaison between the town and the organization. Once again, this is indicative of the quasi model where the town would work collaboratively with a separate entity. Last question is, to meet the goals in the Main Street program, priorities and policies are set by the stakeholders in town liaison, or the town. All right, looks like everybody's voted. Once again, very clear. The intention is the stakeholders and a town liaison. So to quickly recap these, for the first one, this type of approach would be receiving a portion of its funds from the town. Being that it's a portion and not all, this is indicative of the quasi model, most likely with an MSD attached to it to help establish that funding structure where it's more than just paying for the town staff. Question number 2, encourage donations and provide tax credits to individuals and organizations supporting the program. This would be more in terms of how the program is operated. And it would allow for these private corporate or private entities to provide funding. This is a model that would could be done by either a fully non-for-profit or a quasi model. The third one, to meet the criteria, the day-to-day operations, you've indicated that the town liaison is stakeholder. Once again, that is typical of the quasi model. As is number 4, where it's establishing this collaborative partnership between the stakeholders and operating through that town liaison, which would be a town staff person. The 5th one, participate as a liaison to the stakeholder-led organization. Once again, that's consistent with the quasi model. Number 6, the goals in the Main Street program should, and you indicated, provide staff liaison to work with the stakeholders. Once again, that's quasi model. 7, the organization is structured to have the stakeholders and volunteers work with the town liaison. Once again, that's also quasi model. 8, the director employed by the town and works with the as that liaison. Once again, that too is a quasi model. And then finally, the priorities and policies. This is the collaborative effort, and this is indicative of the quasi model. So based on those, we will come back before you with details in terms of setting up an organizational structure that will further details of the differences between the 501c3 and the 501c4 as it relates to the quasi-judicial or the quasi-hybrid model. And with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
2 questions or a request. I'd like to see a proposed budget for a Main Street program that I guess would be quasi-public-private, and then what the tax rate or MSD would be if we could fund maybe 25% of the budget from the MSD. Example of the railroad tracks to Sycamore and a half block either way. We can get the property values and do a quick estimate. If the budget's $100,000 a year, what it would take to come up with $25,000. I've tried to work some numbers, but I don't have access to all the data.
Sure.
Thank you.
We can bring in what data we have available.
Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Baxter? Commissioner Miles?
No questions, sir.
Commissioner Clark?
No questions.
Harrison? Commissioner Laux? Mike? Town of Zebulon Governing Board Rules and Procedure.
Thank you, Mayor. When we last presented this to you, we were right on the heels of learning how Wake County develops their or follows their agenda setting process. And we wanted to take some time to see internally how it would work. And because of that, we are going to propose and get some feedback from you on a slight modification. Also, when we first presented this to you, there was a good amount of conversation regarding when to add agenda items, and so we wanted to introduce to you a third option. And again, just to get some feedback, our intent is to bring this before you for adoption, and granted, this will be just 2 sections of the governing board rules of procedure focused on agenda setting and the role of the presiding officers. We'll have more sections to bring forward to you in the future. So just as a revisit, the intent of this is for you as a board, particularly in a quickly growing and quickly diversifying community, to operate transparently and efficiently. And as we mentioned last time, the town manager would prepare your agenda and it would be made available to the Board of Commissioners at least 4 days before the meeting, and that's currently happening right now. The things that we wanted to introduce to you as new items, and I'm gonna, after I go through this, I'll circle back to this slide so you all can have some discussion on it. First is when to add items, and we wanted to clarify that there's 2 ways that we are going to put in for your consideration to add items. So one way is in an upcoming meeting, and what Wake County does is they require 10 days in advance with the support of a second commissioner. So that is 10 days before the next meeting. Or, and you can do this, and while Wake County doesn't clarify this in their agenda setting, this could be something, I think hopefully it's understood, but just to clarify, during the board comments of a specific meeting, you could introduce a agenda item for a future meeting. So when you're closing out, that is another opportunity to just say, hey, next time I would like to add this item as an agenda item for whatever specific meeting. Could be next regular meeting, could be next work session, could be mini retreat, something along those lines. So just wanted to clarify that. While Wake County focused on 10 calendar days, you actually have another option that's maybe not necessarily understood, and I just wanted to clarify that for you. As far as the option of adding an agenda item to discuss at the meeting that you're in, we talked with you all about what Wake County does, which is they require a unanimous vote. And I don't know what their intent is, but there are some good things associated with that. One of the good things is it meets the intent of the open meetings law, which is it's not a surprise to your constituents. It's not a surprise to your fellow commissioners. It's not a surprise to the staff. It's very transparent that you're adding it and everybody is on board.
but also from a more pragmatic, practical standpoint. When it's a unanimous vote, everyone is on board and prepared rather than it coming from someplace and then you don't necessarily have the best opportunity to fully discuss something because it's come out of the blue, so to speak. So that was one thing that we talked with you last time about because that's what Wake County follows. Some of the feedback we got when we presented this last time was that it'd just be a majority vote, and that's certainly going to be something that's within your purview. Wanted to introduce to you a third option that we've seen other communities, other governing boards pursue, which is a supermajority vote, which would be a 4 of 5. So again, you've got 3 options there that we'll bring forward to you for consideration about adding items to the current meeting. After I go through the agenda setting schedule, I'm going to come back to this slide so we can get some feedback from you all. So as far as the agenda setting schedule, just to, excuse me, just to revisit to what Wake County does. So for the example of a meeting that happens on the, let's say in this case, the 7th of the month, which would be the first Monday, staff reports are due on the 21st. So that for Wake County, they call it an item summary draft due at noon. And then on the 25th, that's when the staff reviews the draft agenda. And then on the 28th, any commissioner that wants an item added as an agenda item to the meeting on the 7th, they add that request, and for Wake County, that's to be due by 5 p.m. And then on the 31st, actually, let me go back. So I'm going to propose something for you all to consider a little bit different than this. So on the next slide, you're going to see that cross on a different date. So just highlight that. And then we're also going to propose something different on where this yellow circle is. So what Wake County does is they review just the draft agenda with the commissioners on a 3-by-3-by-1 so they don't exceed the quorum requirement. And they focus on just reviewing the draft agenda. I think they meet for maybe 45 minutes at max. And then in this example, on the 3rd, the final agenda packet goes to the Board of Commissioners. On the 4th, or the Friday before the meeting, the agenda packet is made public and posted online. And then the 7th in this example month is when the Board of Commissioners meet. So that was what was presented to you last time. What I wanted to just, again, draw your attention to, because you're going to see a little bit different, is this date on the 28th when Commissioner agenda requests are due, and this review draft agenda meeting. So now, given the Zebulon example, and again, we wanted to change, make sure that we could change our process, and while we're still making some adjustments, I feel more comfortable that we can meet these deadlines. So the 21st, much like Wake County, that's when the staff reports will be due. On the 25th, that's when staff would review the draft agenda. And this is the first wrinkle I'm going to propose to you all. Again, this is going to be completely your purview. But whereas Wake County asked that agenda items be available 10 days before, which would be the 28th, I'm recommending that you make it 11 days before, and quite frankly, because that is the standing meeting time that I have with the mayor. And so that would be an opportunity for the mayor to share with me, Commissioner so-and-so with the second by this other commissioner wants this agenda item. So we're moving it up a day, and the reason we are is because it just fits better with our meeting schedule, but I wanted you to be aware of that. And then on the 3rd, final agenda packet would still go to the Board of Commissioners, and then the agenda packet made public would be posted online on the 4th. So that's consistent with what Wake County does. This is where the other wrinkle comes in. You all, I think, and hopefully you consider them valuable, you have monthly meetings where not only you go through a detailed preview of the agenda for the next coming regular meeting, but you have a detailed preview of every meeting coming in that month ahead. So you get a preview of the joint public hearing, you get a preview of the work session, you get a preview, if there is one that month, of the mini retreat. And with Wake County's agenda setting process, that's not afforded to you. You would lose out on a monthly meeting. And if you have value in that, one of the things that we're going to propose is, rather than just having a short combined meeting where you review the agenda at hand, you keep your monthly meetings. And what that would do, and we've started doing that with this month that we're in right now, is that you push your monthly meetings to the Thursday and Friday before the regular meeting. So you will get your agenda packet, you will get a detailed preview of the agenda, but we will also continue and maintain what we have been doing, which is give you a preview of all the other meetings for the month ahead. So that's the other change, is that you keep your monthly meetings. That way you get to review the regular agenda plus preview the joint public hearing, work session, and mini retreat agendas. So let me go back to the earlier slide. Let's see if I can do this quickly. Okay. So again, we're here to receive feedback from you. First, this notion of the upcoming meeting that whereas Wake County says 10 calendar days before, for you all it would be 11 calendar days, or added at the board meeting during board comments for a future meeting, or if you add something to actually discuss at a current meeting, where are you on the spectrum of it's unanimous, it's majority, or it's supermajority? And Mayor, with that, we'll turn it over to you for us to receive feedback.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
I have several revisions that I'd like to see to this, because I think that this takes away quite a bit of why we're here doing what we're doing. I would like to see the final agenda packet to the commissioners on the Tuesday after the review of the draft agenda is given to the commissioners. That will give us time to actually review the packet, as opposed to getting it very last minute and giving us a short amount of time, sometimes less than 1 day, depending on where staff is and their availability to answer questions. I am not in support of the 10 calendar days before a meeting with the support of a second commissioner. Any commissioner should be able to add anything to the agenda and then ask for a vote on it on the day of. And I think that a simple majority vote at the current meeting to add an item to the agenda is sufficient.
Any other comments, Commissioner Miles?
For me, I'm kind of piggybacking off Commissioner Baxter. I think we definitely need more time to do the agenda justice. The 4 days doesn't give enough time. Most of the time, I'll give an example for myself. We get it on a Friday. I'll spend that weekend just kind of going through it. And then I do have questions that I probably could get answered prior to the meeting and give a little bit better explanation to the citizens. So I definitely would like more time than that Friday prior to that. Then I'm with Commissioner Baxter on the majority vote, that 3 of the 5. I think we should be able to add something to the agenda on that. And there again, I think as commissioners, we were selected by the people to add that agenda. Pretty much is we're the voice of the people. So it's that time frame that we as commissioners should be able to put anything on that agenda. So I agree with that as well.
Commissioner Laux?
Yeah, I guess at any meeting, whether it be the Board of Commissioners or work sessions meeting, we should have the opportunity to add an item to the agenda, provided we get the approval, which is 3 out of 5. With the caveat, most of us do want a heads up, including staff, of what's going to be discussed or what's on the radar screen. And I hope we're doing that between ourselves and also with the town manager in our monthly meetings. So there are no hidden bombs, so to speak, that we all know what the hot topics are.
Commissioner Harrison?
I also agree with the the packet. I think that we do need them before then. That weekend up until that Monday is not a lot of time to review it, especially when we have a lot to go over. And I also think that to add the majority vote, I think the majority is what we should do.
I can go along with getting the packet sooner. Adding an agenda item on the current meeting, if we could be told before the meeting, not, between us, exchange what you're going to add so that we would know and not be blindsided at the meeting. I mean, it would just be. And the majority vote.
So it looks like majority vote is consensus?
Consensus.
Yeah, say that word.
Consensus.
Consistent.
I got you.
And moving it up one day? Is that what your recommendation?
I would like to say 2 days.
As far as what?
So we have the draft agenda review on that Monday. I would like, at that point, the agenda should have it's already been staff review and the commissioner requests. So I'm assuming it should be ready by the 1st, what is on this calendar, the 1st. And that would give us 2 additional days for review.
Any discussion on that comment?
I like 7 days. I don't know if that gives us 7 days, at least 7 days.
That gives us 6.
If I could push 7, like I said, it just gives us opportunity that some of the questions I feel that we can kind of research, get with staff prior to a meeting or whatever, and get a little bit better understand ourselves. It's going to, like I said, definitely allow us more time to be prepared.
It gives us 7 with the day of the meeting. So it'll be 7 with the day of the meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Laux?
The sooner the better, if 7 days is possible.
Commissioner Harrison?
No comment.
Commissioner Clark?
No comment.
So is there that word again, consensus, 7 days or?
Mayor, we're just looking for feedback. To Commissioner Locke's point, we're going to have to see if internally, if we can scoot it up that much. So
Okay.
We've gotten some direction. We're in a position now where we can provide some alternatives for the board to consider.
The questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, first quarter report, FY23. We start with fire. Chief Perk, or Chief, Manager Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just give a preamble before we start into these quarterly reports. Typically, we have provided these as attachments to your agenda packet. I think one of the things that removed the possibility is for more of a discussion about what was going on, and so we're moving these quarterly reports to work sessions so you can have more of a dialogue with the department directors. The format that we plan to do, and of course we can always modify, is that we give you an indication of what the workload is looking like. We give you an indication of how we're performing on addressing the workload issues. We're going to give you a trend projection, probably things that you'll see in your upcoming budget, in this case the FY24 budget. And if there is a notable project or program that the department is developing, we'll give you an update on that. That said, we're looking for this to be a discussion, so if there's questions above and beyond what is in the presentation, please ask. And with that, I'll recognize Chief Perry.
Good evening, Mayor and board members. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to go through this with you tonight and provide a little color commentary, if you will, to what you're accustomed to seeing, and welcome the discussion. We'll start off with the data of what's been going on in the fire department and what we have seen in this past quarter. And we'll start off with the call response, which is obviously a very big data point for us. 527 emergency incidents this quarter. I know that looks like a number in front of you. What does that number mean? Well, what we're looking at for us, 2021 was a record year in responses. We all know we're growing, but the call volume increase was more than typical. We typically see a 4 to 5% increase in call volume each year. You may recall back in calendar year 2021, that number exceeded 20% of call volume increase. So when you look at that 527 for this quarter, that puts us about 9% what we saw back in 2021. So what does that tell us? That 2021 wasn't just a fluke, that COVID or weather event, things like that, weather events especially, can cause huge spikes in our call volume. But that wasn't the case. It wasn't just a fluke thing for 2021. In comparison, 2020, which was probably our last, if there was such thing as a regular year, we're about 24% more than what we were just 2 years ago. So call volume is increasing quite dramatically. When you look at that graphically, you see each quarter represented here, and you can see those increases that I just referred to in 21, calendar year 21, which is reflected in some of the FY22 data. But you also see the trend line. We're definitely on a steady trend upward. From there, we'll talk about, just for your information, what does that, what do those calls look like? And when you look at this quarter that we just finished, EMS calls have been and continue to be our heaviest call volume. Statistically speaking, statistically speaking, I'll say it a little better the second time, it makes up about 60 to 70% of our call. I think this is a good time to mention to you, we're all aware of call delays associated with ambulances. That affects us as well. When it takes longer for an ambulance to arrive, our units are sitting there waiting longer. So if it takes 45 minutes for an ambulance just to arrive, our units are not available to go to other calls. So that situation is getting better. Is it where we or the county or anyone wants it to be? No. But some of the things that you've heard through reports is making a positive impact, and we're seeing a reduction in our on-scene time for EMS calls. The volume is still there, but our time on those calls is getting, I won't say it's getting back to normal quite yet, but it is getting better. Another factor that you've heard us talk about before are our concurrent calls or simultaneous calls. In large departments, this is not a really significant factor. In a small department, it's a huge factor. In 2021, we were above 20%. We remain above 20%. Most smaller departments or single station departments like to be less than 15%. What does that mean? That means for us, there's about 400 times a year that our crew is on a call and additional calls occur. So how does that impact us? There's either an extended response time, because our guys either try to clear up the call they're on and go respond, or the help has to come from another department. Wendell, for example, answers calls in our area quite frequently. Or it's our volunteer base responding from home. There's a call delay associated with that. So an extended response time or reduced manpower. Where we would normally respond 3 to 4 personnel on a call, maybe we would just respond 2, just because that's all we have left in our bench, so to speak, to be able to send to those calls. And lastly, as far as data points, talk to you about response time. A lot of things come from response time. And when we talk about response time, I'm talking about the time that someone dials 911 until the time that we arrive. For most everybody, from an industry standard as well as most people, when you dial 911 on your phone, it seems like forever before the fire truck pulls up. And that is what we're tracking. You've heard me talk about it before, but we don't track that in one big lump sum. We track that in individual pieces, because in each individual piece is tracked, is impacted differently. So to kind of walk you through those pieces, the first is the call processing, and this is not a goal of ours. We're not in control of call processing time. That's the time you spend on the 911 call, but it does, to the person that has an emergency, it's a big issue whether we have control over it or not. So we look at that at a 2-minute goal. That involves the ring time. How long does the phone ring? How long does it take to answer those questions? And you look at it from a 2-minute goal of getting that call dispatched. 74% of the calls that occurred in this quarter were dispatched within that 2-minute goal. I do want to take just a second to tell you there's a lot of ways that is work to reduce that time. And one example is if a person calls with a serious incident, if anyone's ever been involved in those 911 call exchanges, it's a lot of questions. Those questions dictate how large or how small of a response comes. If you say, my house is on fire, I can see the flames, that's going to get a very large response. On the medical side, if you say, I'm cut, and then you begin to answer the questions, that could determine the number of ambulances or the amount of help you get, what level of help. So that's why you answer all those questions. But on those very serious emergencies, and I'll go back to the example again, if you call and as soon as they answer 911 and you say, my house is on fire, they immediately dispatch that call so that units are en route while they're asking you the questions. And then based on your answers, they can either upgrade the call, which means add more units to respond, or downgrade the call and tell units, you can cancel, this call is not. So I want to make sure, take that opportunity to explain, because to a lot of people, they don't know that calls are dispatched very, very quickly on those more severe type calls. So that helps with our call processing time. So you got how long does it take to answer the call? We were at 74% last quarter. Then the turnout time, one that we absolutely have a lot of control over. How long does it take our guys from the time that the pager goes off, the alarm goes off, to they're in the truck rolling down the street? Our goal is to be en route in 90 seconds, 90% of the time. So for the last quarter, we were at 91%. Some of you may recall about a little greater than a year ago, we implemented a system to try to improve our turnout times to get our gentlemen on the trucks quicker, to get them out the door bit, and that's had a very positive impact. And we're happy to say we continue to meet that goal for this quarter. And then the last piece of the puzzle, so to speak, on response time is the truck rolls out of the door. How long does it take them to get there? Our goal in town is a 4-minute response time. That's based on national standards. That wasn't a number that we just came up with. And for the last quarter, we were at 48%. That's when we don't have a lot of control over, because it just takes time to drive from one point to the next point. And we'll talk about that impact a little bit. So when you put those three together for the quarter, we were at 81%, which is a total time of 7.5 minutes. When you add all those up, which want to be there, 7.5 minutes, we did that in 81% of the time. But you can see how each one of those pieces of the puzzle add up to get us from alarm time to arrive time. I threw a lot at you. Yes, sir.
One quick question. You said the system that you implemented, can you elaborate on that a little bit, please?
Yes, so we implemented a visual alerting system within the station that provides information relative to call volume, and it actually shows them real time how they're doing towards that goal. So as each call occurs, it shows them for their shift, we met our response time goal or we didn't. It gives them visual indication of, yeah, we're doing it right, or we need to speed up a little bit. And with them having that feedback, now they know where they're at, and it's been very, very helpful.
Tracking. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions on the response time piece? Like I know there's a lot there.
This sounds like a simple yet a hard question. What is the number one resource you would like to have to increase the response time? Is there a single resource
to reduce the response time? It's going to be additional locations, station locations.
It also includes trucks and men.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. When you look at these and take that one step further, we track each one of these individually. And then when you look at this, what are we not meeting? It's the travel time goals. And the travel time, the only thing that makes travel time go down is proximity to the station. In our case, our area we serve is growing, so it'll end up meaning more fire stations in the future, which is a great segue because that's exactly where we're headed. So what I've tried to do is categorize some of these trends that I've just told you about and what are we doing about them, or what are our plans, if you will. So our call volume is increasing. We've got those increased simultaneous calls. Results in delays, it results in insufficiently staffed calls, and our manpower is insufficient for those large emergencies. One of the data points I didn't show you, just to keep from overwhelming you, but you heard it in some of last year's budget conversations, were those total number of responders on a call, what's referred to as the effective response force. And we talked about that during the budget process, that our effective response force comes up short on those larger emergencies. So what are the actions? The actions to result of that is exactly what you just mentioned, Mr. Laux, is increased staffing and subsequently fire crews. The more staff results in additional fire crews. The good news about that as we look forward in this, from this perspective is, this is an action you've already done. This is not one of those ones that I come to you and say, this is what we want to do. You just did it. Those people started on Monday of this week, 5 additional employees that allows us to do both of what I just referred to here, increase our staffing and our crews. We'll take 1 crew and we'll split it and make 2 crews. That gives us the capability to handle more calls. It gives us the ability to handle more simultaneous calls without having response delays. So we're really excited about seeing the results of the actions that have already been taken, and I'll follow back up on those, where we're at with those individuals in just a second. But for that reason, this begins to morph into next year's budget request, we've got a staff allocation that's been provided to us, so there won't be any additional staff requests coming from our department in the upcoming budget. Another example of the response to the trends, we've got those longer response times. This goes to the discussion we just had. That 40% number, unfortunately, is not going up. It is slowly going down as the town grows. It's distance, it's congestion, it's all the reasons you know it would take longer. No different than it would take anyone longer distance to travel from one part of town to the other. We have the same constraints, if you will. We've also got what you're well familiar with. The fire station facility is inadequate. We spent a lot of time talking about that. What are the actions? Relocation of the current fire station facility. We're working on that. I'm going to give you an update of it. What you're doing will dramatically improve both of these trends. The fire station facility that we have been talking about for some time puts us in better proximity to our entire town, and the idea of future substations will work towards this increase in those response time goals. The picture I show here is a county town of Fuquay partnership, as they are doing dealing with some of the same issues we are, and with a similar project. And this is where they're building fire station number 4 in Fuquay with Wake EMS, Wake County government, and the town of Fuquay. So with that, I'll move to the couple project updates just to tell you initiatives that are already in progress, just to let you know where we're at. The fire EMS station project that you're very familiar with. We are currently working in Wake County to finalize the number of needed spaces. I can give you a couple of examples. We worked through, for example, we know today our base space is inadequate. So the architect works to design a new base space that will accommodate both ambulances, our current apparatus fleet, and so you see what the space itself could look like. Our training room today is inadequate. You've heard that many, many times. So he provides a potential arrangement for how our training room could look in the new facility. The fire inspector's office, and again, there's nothing special about that, but for us, that's a high priority for any of you who've met. I know Commissioner Baxter has had a meeting or two with Fire Inspector or Fire Marshal Chris Bissett, and this is a great improvement over what Mr. Bissett deals with today. In the bottom, there's a couple of things that are especially dear to me. One, this is a proposed turnout gear storage area, and this is a decon area. Both of those are related to our cancer reduction initiative. Firefighters have more instances of cancer than many other professions. So many people are affected, so we're trying so many different ways to reduce that number. Storage of firefighter protective gear outside of the bay where exhaust can contaminate it. That's in a different room. And then a decon area which allows for cleaning of the gear after it has been soiled, if you will, at fire scenes. And the last little shot there is a tool room, and if anybody who's been into some of our more cramped spaces in our existing, but they take all those pieces and they put those together to develop a floor plan. So I just wanted to give you that as an example. What's coming next? Public engagement. That's a piece that a lot of us have been looking forward to. We're in the finalizing phase of floor plans and site plans. So we're at the phase where we need to start soliciting public input. We talked just as late as today about how we go about doing that. Our plan at this point, subject to change, is to begin that very soon after the first of the year, knowing the holidays are coming up. We felt it best not to try to kick that off right in the middle of the holidays. But our goal would be to the 1st of January have the first public engagement session, which is a overview session. It is a chance to explain the project and begin to get feedback. We would do that in many different ways, in person, put it on the internet, on our website. We would provide multiple ways for people to give us feedback to us. And then we would follow up with them probably the 1st of February, about a month later, to say, here's what we have done from your feedback. Here's, if you told us this is what we would like the fire station to look. In a residential area, we would like it to look like this so it fits in, and the architect would have a chance to be able to kind of display that and respond to some of that has been suggested. Another project update is the sleeping quarter renovation. You heard about this at our mini retreat. The project did come in way over budget. We've been working lately with the lowest bidding contractor. At this point, quite honestly, we've cut the project to some very we've cut so much stuff out of the project, it's beginning to lose its effectiveness as related to what we were trying to accomplish. And we've done, in my opinion, very little cost cutting. We've cut a lot of things, and we're just not seeing the resulting cost cut to go along with it. So we're working to continue to work through that, to have a presentation for you at your next meeting to kind of tell you where we're at and work from there. We have moved some of our staff to the old EMS building because this one is very time sensitive. I just told you our new employees have started. They go on shift Monday night, and we have nowhere for them to sleep. So myself, Chris Bissett, we have moved out of the fire station. We are operating out of the EMS building now just to provide some physical square footage to put some beds to get these new employees in the building. The fire safety house, one of my favorite. I wish I knew how much I would have liked this thing going into it. The kids absolutely love the fire safety house. It came in, unfortunately, about a week too late to really get the best bang for the buck during Fire Prevention Week because we had already done a lot of our fire prevention events at the schools. But we've already reached out. We're scheduling events for schools, and if not, we're talking it up to use it at some of the sites. You've seen some of the stuff, the pictures and the videos and that type thing. But the fire safety house is going to be a really big asset for teaching kids safety within their home and exit drills. I'm sure any of those kids at Zebulon GT Magnet Elementary will tell you how much fun they had exiting. That black mat that you see on the side is where they can jump out the window and land on that, and that is what it's all about. They will do that as many times as you'll let them jump out that window, I assure you. One that I added because there's been some recent action on the emergency operations plan. This was another item that was included in the budget for this year. We've been working with IEM, an international contractor or consulting firm that writes emergency operations plans and a lot of other emergency management related plans. IEM wrote EOPs for Wake County and most of the municipalities in Wake County, so they're very familiar, more so than some of the other consultants that we've talked to. Their plan is to assess the draft work that we've done, complete it, finish it, so we can use it and develop some checklists. There's two main reasons why we want the EOP finished and done. One, it provides us operational guidance. When a hurricane comes through, when a tornado comes through, when a winter storm event comes through, basically it's the plan that we work by that gives us, this is how we will do things, and we're not shooting from the hip, if you will. The second part of that is the FEMA compliance. After 9/11, the federal government mandated how these types of emergencies would be handled. So we've got to make sure we've got plans that are compliant with what the federal government mandated. Why is that important? It's important because when they start handing out the money for mitigation efforts, for rebuilding, for whatever, they want to see that we did it in compliance with those federal guidance, and the emergency operations plan does exactly that. So we're in the final stages of working with IEM to get them involved in this project and getting us finished up. And then I'll finish my part tonight with just a couple of staff updates to tell you where we're at. Those new employees that I referred to did start on Monday. We're super glad and super excited to have them on board. They come from Kinston, Rocky Mount, Tarboro, and Archer's Lodge. So we've been able to hire some very, very talented employees, and they're very much excited about getting on board. They're in orientation this week, trying to learn everything that they can learn about, in their cases, what's different about Zebulon from what they're used to in their previous jobs. We give them all the ins and outs. On Monday, this coming Monday, they will actually move to a 24-hour shift, but they will continue their orientation. And in mid-January, we will split. They will already be split up, but we'll move formally to that 2-3-person crew that we've been looking forward to. That will involve us staffing the engine and the ladder, as you see in the picture here, which provides us, many people don't know, they see the ladder and they think about it's all about getting high, and why do you need to get up so high in a small town? But you may recall, or especially those who were here when we bought these two trucks, the ladder truck is integral in all of our rescue efforts, motor vehicle extrication. It's a very utility-driven vehicle, so it serves a huge function of, even if the ladder on the top is not involved at all. So that will be an asset to have both of those vehicles on the road providing service for us. And lastly, I just want to give some of our staff kudos for work well done. We couldn't do it without our staff. Lieutenant Justin Lee, Lieutenant Austin Morgan, these two gentlemen, to prepare ourselves to move these guys to these two different crews, we needed to make some promotions. We needed to put some people in some more leadership roles. That's a big part of that career ladder that Joe mentioned earlier. These gentlemen have been excellent in their abilities, and they proved through an assessment process that they were ready for that additional responsibility. So we look forward to Lieutenant Justin Lee, who is a senior firefighter, and Lieutenant Austin Morgan, who is a senior firefighter also on a different shift. Both of those gentlemen will be assigned to the ladder when that change occurs in January. Firefighter Peyton Richardson, who is one of our newer employees, he's been with us about a year and a half. He's working on those driver operator pumps and water supply certifications. Those are state certifications. Those are the steps of the, if you will, the rungs of the ladder that move him to get ready for those senior firefighter positions and those kind of things. So congratulations to Firefighter Richardson for taking the initiative to get that additional training to move up through our organization. Likewise, Brandon Turner, until Monday, he was our newest employee. He's really happy this week because he is no longer the new guy. Firefighter Turner has his 1 year anniversary with us in about a week or two, but he is already taking classes beyond what he was required to have, and we're very proud of him as well. These guys have very much got their eyes set on this career ladder. What have I got to do to put me in position to move up within the organization? It's a huge motivating factor, and all four of these gentlemen are illustrating that very, very well. So with that, I think I'm at the end of my part, and I'll take any questions you may have. Yes, sir.
Miles?
The gentleman that you just hired, how challenging was that to find what you feel is qualified firemen? How challenging was it for you?
It was very challenging. it was much better this time than it has been in the past, if that makes sense. So we would typically have single digits of applicants. So what's different about this time? We've increased our starting salary, which was a huge factor. So we had more applicants. Did we see the applicants that some other jurisdictions have? No, but we've dramatically improved them. It was a great improvement. Whereas we would have single digits of applications, we would have 25, 30 applications to be able to select from these 5 individuals.
So with that said, what do you feel made those guys take the jump? I saw we took them from like Kinston, Arch Lodge. What is it that made them take that jump from those organizations to ours? What is that thing that we have that sparked them?
Great question, and if we had them here today, we would probably get a number of answers. Because for each one, it seems to be different things that motivate them. I think some of them is the growth. I'd say that's a probably more common answer. A lot of these guys see the growth that Zebulon has coming towards it, and they want to be a part of that. They want to be a part of an organization that is growing, that is on the move as compared to some areas that are a little more stagnant. They see a lot of potential here. Okay. And I think if I had to say the number one thing, I hear that a lot. They were very excited. And I'll just for a second, the second thing I hear a lot is they like the personal nature that not only Zebulon has, but we do as town government. I think that the small town feel that we have in our strategic plan, to these people, that's a lot. I've already heard that feedback from these guys that the relationships that they're already seeing, they're not just a number, and they're not just an employee, they're already being recognized as an individual. And today they had tours with many of the other department heads, and they came back to wow, having these interactions, I've never had any interactions like this in these larger places where I've worked in the past.
Okay, thank you. One last question. As we grow, I know kind of like, even with the mail post office, they're having issues kind of like finding roads and streets. Is that an issue for you guys?
We attack that with a lot of technology. Okay. So is it a challenge? It is, because there's new streets, as you can imagine, every day. Correct. The system I referred to you that's in the station that helps with our turnout times also provides a map that shows exactly where that call is at. So as they're literally walking through the building, they can glance up and go, okay, that call's in that subdivision, I know where it's at. Okay. The officer in charge of that truck has a map in front of him. So if it's a brand new street, brand new house, it shows him exactly where that call is at, and it can route him to the call. Even the application that they carry on their cell phone can give them more indication of where that call's at. Without that additional technology, it would be almost insurmountable. But with the technology, it helps us tremendously.
Okay, and then one last thing, you talked about the growing aspect for the building aspect of it. The percentage of like contracts given to local, do we kind of shop local first before when we contract out? Can you help me understand that a little bit?
We do. And we try to advertise, and obviously advertising goes even further than that, but most definitely. I think in the case of like our fire station renovation project, right. Those that were further away, I don't think had quite as much interest because there's just so much work out there. Okay. We had in our pre-bid meeting, for example, we had contractors as far away as Wake Forest, but then when they actually bid, they didn't bid because there's just so much work out there.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Harrison?
Could you, and you may have given us this number before, but could you give us the difference in the budget and the lowest bid that you received for the renovation quarters?
So the total budget for the renovation, which had the design, all the different pieces, was $221,000. Our lowest bid was $332,000.
Okay.
So we've got, if you look at the 332 part, it's going to actually take more than that should we go with the low bid because we still got those other pieces, the design, the furnishings, what have you. So yeah, we're still considerably off.
So you're about 111,000 short, thereabouts, 110? What? I was asking, he's about 111,000 short, you saying?
Altogether, it's closer, I believe, to about 180.
180.
When you add those other pieces to it.
Oh, some other pieces.
That's right.
Okay.
The pieces of that were not in part of the construction part of the project.
Track.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? I had, and this may be a little bit off from this presentation, but when you were talking about the emergency operations, and this may include our police department also, as far as an incident that may require citizens to be notified of an emergency in that area and what action to take. I know we have something that goes out on the phone as an alert. Could you kind of speak to where we are with that and how many citizens are signed up? Because I think it's voluntary.
It is. Yeah, so we use the Wake County system, which is called the Ready Wake system. So if you see it advertised, it's branded as Ready Wake. The Ready Wake system within the corporate limits has about 2,500 contacts. If a person has a landline phone or a hardwired phone, then they're automatically loaded into the system. The only problem is so many people don't have wired phones anymore. But when you look at how many people have either been loaded into the system because they have a wired phone, or the people who have voluntarily signed up, there's just a few more than 2,500 people or contacts, 2,500 contacts. Some of them are businesses as well that receive those phone calls. We encourage participation in the Ready Wake system through social media, through different advertising means. For example, Public Works has provided flyers in the past, and they have indicated that you can sign up through Ready Wake as well. So we hit it from a lot of different departments to try to encourage that. And then Wake County does a lot of outreach efforts as well. They have a person that only does outreach, and Ready Wake is a big part of theirs. So when they put out information, we try to tag on and share along with that as well.
I guess one of the reasons I'm kind of bringing this up is because of some of our recent incidents with the residents being contacted about mass shootings.
Sure.
And the time that some people were getting the information as opposed to other folks getting the information. I think it's under review right now.
Yes, sir.
But I would hope that we could improve the number of folks that we have that's can take advantage of that system.
And Mayor, if I may, the system is all based off location. So if you sign up and you're near an incident and the system is activated, the people making those decisions can say, here's an incident, notify everybody within a mile. Notify, they can come up with a reasonable perimeter, if you will, or they can literally trace on the screen, say, I want to notify everybody in this subdivision that there's a gas leak in progress, and they need to stay at home or leave home or whatever the guidance is. But you're right. The key is people need to sign up so they can get those messages. And then once they sign up, again, based on the we can notify everybody, all 2,500 of those. We've done that a couple of times for some projects that the Public Works had going on, some things that we need to notify everybody. We can notify the entire town in just a matter of minutes. It's very, very quick.
I would just hope that this information somehow gets out to our new developments. Folks that's coming in may not be privileged or know that they need to sign up for this system. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
You're very welcome.
And with that, we will do a 5-minute break.
Right on.
There must be something about my presentations. I don't know.
You next or is Chris?
between Target and Walmart. Imagine Walmart without the scary people.
What Johnny cooked tonight?
He's working, so he didn't cook.
Economic development, that's great.
Maybe he'll cook tomorrow night.
You gonna make him cook on Friday?
He wants to eat, he cooks. I did do spaghetti last night.
It's called survival.
He cooks better than I do.
Yeah. I don't blame him.
I don't enjoy it.
If I had to eat, gotta eat.
Eating up spaghetti sauce and cooking noodles, I can handle that. And I make a mean spaghetti sauce, and I make good homemade soup. Shrimp Creole. Okay, girl. All right. Remind me, I've forgotten all about it. I need to hit the seafood market.
I made a shrimp pasta the other night. I thought that was
Eating to
I
order.
was like, well, okay.
Planning?
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the board. For our quarterly update, we always start with probably the most noticeable of the different divisions, and that's our permitting division. I say this is because out of all the divisions as part of planning, this has the most regular activity and day-to-day operations. We do have one staff person that is solely dedicated to permits. But as you can see, based on this trends analysis from 2017 to 2022, based on past certificate of occupancies issued, we are growing at record rates. Certificate of occupancy is a good metric because it's when folks are allowed to move into their home. We have situations where somebody might apply for permits, they don't get billed, especially for infill developments sometimes, but certificate of occupancies creates a very definitive benchmark. Having said that, we did have a record September as well as July in terms of issuance. August was a little bit down from where it was back in 2019. There's some metrics that are involved with that, primarily as it relates to materials availability. Having said that, for this quarter, we issued 103 certificate of occupancies. As you see, that green line is above all the other lines. So right now we're projecting issuing more certificate of occupancies this calendar year than any other calendar year. To put this additionally in perspective, while we issued 103 COs within this past quarter, in 2017, we issued a total of 74 for the entire year. At that time, we had a staff of 4, and we currently have a total of staff of 6. And I'll get back into the staffing in a little bit here. In terms of the approved neighborhoods, we always like to provide a snapshot, and this is as of the end of the quarter. You see a lot of zeros in lots recorded and lots with certificate of occupancies. These are neighborhoods that are under construction. Sydney Creek has 123 lots that are recorded out of the 659 that they're anticipated. They're in the construction process of several homes, but there's no certificate of occupancies. So between those, between Sydney Creek, Weaver's Ridge, and Jasper Place, these are all neighborhoods that have vested rights, which means that they will move forward with the building process. None of those have occupancies yet. These will be new neighborhoods that our police and fire departments will have to be able to respond to folks. Same thing with Cadence Meadows with 406 units. Carrington is an apartment complex that was approved as part of a special use permit a couple years back. And they are hopefully going to be breaking ground here very soon. They have approved plan sets. There's some things that they have to work out a little bit with NCDOT and get their final driveway permits, but that will be a 72 unit apartment complex. Everything you see here will become reality in completion, probably the next 7 years or less. With all of this, right now, our population total is about 9,200. Keep that in mind, because when we went through the U.S. Census, the census number was around 6,900. So we've grown that much since April of 2020 to 9,200. We have enough permits that are in review right now, as well as enough homes that are under construction to break 10,000. And we use a number that the Census Bureau provides of 2.69 persons per home to run those calculations. The apartment complexes have a different calculation, but will still be over 10,000, even independent of the apartment complex. Moving to development, we did have a very busy quarter. We had 3 technical review committees, 7 plats recorded, and these are phases of neighborhoods. Plats recorded is when they're able to start the construction process of the home. A lot of times you'll receive around the same time the preliminary acceptance of the road network and the infrastructure network around that same time. We issued 3 commercial certificate of occupancies. Sometimes this is infill businesses such as Rootbound or Pinafore or Fitness 360. Those would be examples. Zoning compliance permits is another opportunity for other non-commercial such as daycares, family care homes, those type of uses. 4 sign permits were issued, and then 5 temporary use permits. Temporary use permit is different than a special event activity that occurs where you have to close the roads. As an example, there was a Cars for Clay event that was held at J&M Chevrolet. That is an example of a temporary use permit. It didn't require any governmental resources. It was essentially all contained within the confines of a business or other private land, so it didn't require anything beyond that temporary use permit. It could also be issued such as a temporary construction trailer is another example of a temporary use permit. In terms of the more comprehensive reviews that we are doing, that's a bit more extensive. We're doing reviews for Tractor Supply, Highway 55 Grill, the Zebulon Longhouse, which is the extension of Norris Brewing, La Mexicanita, which they're converting, or they're looking to convert their restaurant portion into more of an event space. Rocket Express Car Wash, Presto Photo, which is proposed to go into one of the tenants that was formerly Whitley Galleries, that's still in review. GNIC is the industrial development that you see between Horton and Gannon Road. It's the Garrett Noel Innovation Center. It's an existing building that they've added on to. Our staff was out there today to do preliminary conversation for a walkthrough. And then Lounge 96 is a lounge bar that's proposed to go in across the street in the tobacco and vape shop across from where Old Raleigh Distillery is. In terms of the residential developments in review, there's a lot. Some of these have received approval since the end of the quarter, but we have several others that are going to be coming forward in the next couple months for conditional zonings. One of the things in terms of the trends that we're seeing with this is the response time is diminishing. We only have so many folks, and with the departure of the assistant director back in September, our caseload has not gone down. In fact, we're receiving more applications and more preliminary tire kicker meetings, as we call them, where developers, property owners will approach us to ask about, hey, what can I do with the property? Or, hey, we're looking to put in this 250 lot subdivision here in this location. What's the process? Unfortunately, we're unable to get these in the queue as quickly as we would like. We've also had to amend the development calendar. Part of that is in response to some of the changes that we've seen in terms of the quality of reviews that or quality of applications. Before an item comes before you for conditional zoning or plan development, it is reviewed sometimes multiple iterations. We want to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information, and if possible, making sure that's meeting all of the parameters of our Unified Development Ordinance. In order to accomplish that, we've had to take in consideration second and third reviews in some of these. So by default, we're amending the development calendar to automatically include a second review. The general interest meetings, as I indicated, have been going up substantially as well. Last week, we've had 5 as an example, and last quarter, between 3 staff members, myself, Planner 2 and a Planner 1, we ended up having 27 different meetings that ranged everything from independent business owners looking to potentially open up shop here to 600 lot subdivisions that would be connecting into the adjacent municipalities. Furthermore, we've seen an increased complexity in these developments. No longer is it just lots with homes. We're looking based on the changes in the UDO and the utility allocation policy, making sure that these are neighborhoods and developments that people want to stay in. When possible, create multi-generational neighborhoods through mixed product opportunities, mixed income neighborhoods with mixed product opportunities. With those additional incentives, increases the complexity of that. Now, I say all that to say between our residential permit review for the building permits as well as the development increases, one of the things that you'll be seeing as part of the budget cycle is an additional Planner 1. The role of that Planner 1 will be helping with the zoning compliance permits, the sign permits, as well as doing the zoning review component of the building permit review. That entails going into the actual application and making sure that it meets the regulations that were set forth as conditions, that it has a certain percentage of stone on the front facade, that the certain features such as shutters, corbels, or other architectural features are included. And more so is making sure that the house is being placed properly on the lot that's within the setbacks. Those are all very time-consuming items, and with this increased complexity, it's more along the lines of what a Planner 1 would do as opposed to a planning technician. In terms of overall developments, it wouldn't be a planning presentation without a map, so here's our map. As you can see, all of these different colors are either developments that are under construction or things that are under review in some stage. You see the several yellow boxes located here, 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 and here. These are all large residential neighborhoods that will be coming before you, either for plan development approvals or conditional zonings within the next couple months. We've gotten confirmation that you're going to see Wake-Lawn Mills come before you for the December joint public hearing, and we're still waiting on confirmation for the Walpurdy tract, which is located there. But that's not the limit. We've had conversations with folks in this neighborhood or this area about possible developments, as well as had preliminary conversations recently about potential large developments in this area as well. So the growth is going to continue in terms of what the planning department has to review. With all this, we have 27 neighborhoods or 27 developments that are under construction, 10 proposed, not just residential, but some commercial. With this, we did have 6 approved based on the current interactive development map and 9 that are pending board action. Some of these are special use permits. I'm not going to go into the details of those, but we do have several items that are going to be coming before you. Code enforcement is the third category or third division of our office. During the last quarter, we had 51 code enforcement cases related to tall grass and weeds, 11, which is everything from signage to other minor violations, one parking vehicle violation, which we're still working on. That property is now to the point where it's receiving fines for non-compliance. 2 stop work orders, which is when somebody begins construction and did not get the necessary permits. That's a significant health and safety issue, so we want to make sure that those are addressed. But whenever possible, we like to work with the property owners and find some compromise as opposed to issuing a full stop work order. 5 trash or garbage violations, and then 2 zoning or permitting violations. Sometimes these will be things, the zoning violation, they put up a fence, but it wasn't constructed in accordance with our Unified Development Ordinance. This is 100% responsive code enforcement. Once again, much like the permitting, the response time is diminishing. This individual is also responsible for going out to the sites and measuring the setbacks for each of the new residential homes. So that 103 certificate of occupancies that were issued last quarter, you back that up 6 months, that's 103 lots that the staff person went out to measure. It's also 103 lots that they went out at the end of the development to make sure it was built in compliance with what was permitted. So the increased number of residential is also causing concerns with code enforcement. We do have, unfortunately, a reactive only enforcement. We don't have the time or capabilities right now to do proactive enforcement. However, it is something that several members of the board have indicated that they would like to see in the future, just making sure that it's not overly burdensome, that's not heavy-handed. Once again, much like everything else, we're seeing increased complexity. We do have a very intensive Unified Development Ordinance, and this person is the responsible party for making sure that that is enforced. Finally, as I mentioned, the zoning inspections have increased. So with this, you'll also see a second staff request for a second code enforcement officer. That'll be not only for the code enforcement officer for the salary, but also for a vehicle, as well as other technical items that they're going to need, specifically an iPad that allows them to go into the software that we utilize with Wake County to do these inspections. The last of our divisions is economic development, and this is also a project that we're moving forward with. As you heard earlier tonight, we're in the transition of moving from the downtown associate community into a North Carolina Main Street community. It's been a very extensive process, and our DAC coordinator has done a really terrific job providing the documentation and everything else in terms of what our next steps are in transitioning into that. We've been working extensively with Wake County Economic Development. We've been reviewing the request for proposals or request for information. You heard a couple months back, Michael Haley, the director of Wake County Economic Development, talked a little bit about that. We make sure we review those, and if there are sites that conform to those parameters, we're responding to them. We get 3 to 4 of those every week, so it does take up some time. Because of that, we are in the final days of accepting applications now for a full-time economic development specialist. That position closes on at midnight on the 20th, and next week we'll be reviewing those applications to make sure that we have the qualified candidates. We've already gone through, and it looks like we do have several qualified candidates already, and for that we're going to be looking at a 2-part process. Part 1 will be an email interview type where they're going to have to respond to a series of questions. They're also going to have a written activity that they're going to need to respond to, something that is a very practical element that's going to be part of their day-to-day operations. We will use that to narrow it down to the final candidates, in which case those candidates will come in for a formal panel-style interview as well as a presentation exercise. We want to make sure that it's somebody that is going to be able to present to this board for different incentives and activities, as well as make sure that they're going to be comfortable presenting to potential corporations and business owners that are looking to come here. It's important to note that this process is not going to be done solely by town staff. We're going to be reaching out to a couple members of Wake County Economic Development, as well as several economic development professionals in the surrounding counties, as well as some that are in the private sector, one of which lives here in town. And she's already well aware that we're going to be reaching out to her to help create a panel type operation where they're going to provide a recommendation on who they believe the best candidate is, being that they're far more versed in economic development than I am. No? Okay. So she was shutting down again on me. Finally, their first task in terms of a project will be to create an economic strategic plan. This is something that was included in the last year's budget and approved, and we're going to be moving forward. We want to make sure that we have that full-time economic development specialist in-house, and this will be their first real extensive project moving forward. They will not be doing this on their own. We'll be hiring a consultant that will help walk them through, make sure that we have appropriate public input and public engagement, and it'll be a very, very transparent process. This will provide the direction that we can use to move forward in terms of what economic development programs, incentives, or other activities, including whether or not we're just going to go after small tech flex, or if we're going to go after major biosciences corporations. This will narrow it down and create a hyper focus for that individual to work off of. The last of the projects that we have is the transportation impact fee. Transportation is the #1 concern that we've all heard, and that is directly growth related. So with that, we are working with a consultant to really establish what the purpose of the transportation impact fee is. That is tied back to the Grow Zebulon Transportation Plan. Part of this, much like our Parks and Recreation Master Plan, is, okay, how do we execute this? Because we don't have the funding capabilities independently. But with the transportation impact fee and how that scope is situated, we can really narrow in on what we should be charging residential developments, commercial developments, and all that will be based on different variables. The information sources that the consultants are going to be using are not only the existing transportation counts, but also our growth percentages. They realize that this is an opportunity to take advantage of the growth that we're experiencing to help address a problem that is only going to continue to get worse if we do not address it. But all of this will be related back to how do we implement that comprehensive transportation plan. They will provide revised calculations from what we have now, which really goes into a combination of trip generation as well as square footages that becomes cost prohibitive for certain uses, such as drive-through coffee shops. And then they will provide that, and then we'll include that as part of your budget process. Specifically within the fee schedule is where this item will be located. And with that, I am available if you have any questions.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Baxter?
I would like to know if we can have a review, well, I know that we can, I'd like to know what the timetable is that's reasonable to talk about what our approved uses are for the downtown core. Mm-hmm. All we're seeing is bars coming in, and at this point, it's getting ridiculous, and I'd like to review what our approved uses are and see if there are adjustments that we need to be, adjustments that need to be made. And seeing how many houses we have, how many units we have that are currently approved, and how many more that we have coming into focus. I know that we just put the utility allocation plan into effect, but I would like to review that as well.
The utility allocation plan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Traffic.
Commissioner
Sorry.
Clark.
Thank you for letting me talk. I know you're talking about the impact fees and everything, but
Yes.
the impact fee right now is not going to help us with what the situation is with our transportation. Any way to fast track doing something? I mean, it's getting horrible. They're coming down from south all the way by your house every morning. They're lined up at the stoplights. They're lined up just, and in the afternoons, and we haven't done anything with the roads yet. And to me, we have got to do something with the roads, put something aside, or we're going to have to, we can't handle all this development and these new homes if we don't have the roads to provide the traffic. We can't do it.
You're correct. We do have a transportation impact fee that is currently in place. That calculation is essentially $1,177 times the peak hour generation rate, which is set forth by the International Transportation Manual. It's a whole bunch of words to say that value is approximately $1,200 for each vehicle that goes through at the peak time. For residential uses, that's around $1,200 because that generates approximately one peak hour trip. For something, let's say 1,000 square foot drive-through coffee shop, that value is changed up to almost $750,000. So trying to find a good balance between there, I think, is imperative. Part of this is we could potentially have that calculation and do a mid-year adjustment for the fee schedule. However, there's processes that we have to follow to do that. And by the time we get those numbers...
It sounds to me we need to be doing something and not just calculating. We need to see some work being done. We need to see something happening. It's just going to get worse. And I just can't see any of these subdivisions, me saying yes to anything now until we got something taken care of.
Commissioner Miles.
I might piggyback off what Commissioner Clark is saying. Right now, I mean, that's the number one email, phone call I'm getting is traffic, and they're saying you're still allowing more growth. They're asking me, saying, okay, who's driving it? Who's in charge of this thing? It's like almost that we're putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It's not stopping, as Commissioner Clark just said. We're growing, and to throw the cloud up, that's saying where you guys are saying you're the second fastest growing municipality in North Carolina, and you're supposed to be holding your head held high, but yet you can't control what you have. These roads that were built, the infrastructure cannot handle the growth that we have. When I look at that number of 4,000 and something, I shake because I'm like, I really don't see how we can handle that growth. And that's one of our things that we tout is growing smart. I don't think that's growing smart. In my personal opinion, it's like we really have to stop and say, really look at what we have currently. These roads that we currently have, the biggest thing that used to delay us was a tractor or a combine or something like that. Now it's sheer volume. It's not like an accident on 64. And we have these people coming in, but we got to be able to get them out where they're not sitting in traffic 30 minutes. I lived in D.C. and the big cities where it's just volume, and that's what we're dealing with now. So I think we as commissioners really have to stop and take a look at what we're allowing to come in. It's just time now. Like I said, we're going at a rate of 7 people per day. We're going, as you said, to 2.6 per household. That's a lot. And as you said yourself, we're growing at a record rate. It's good for growing, I mean, to say that we're growing, but just like how do we handle that traffic impact? It's just there.
Commissioner Laux.
Yeah, we're actually also being impacted by the towns around us.
There you go.
If you saw today's paper, Wendell annexed 458 acres, which is up to 1,800 homes, and that's along 97. That traffic's also going to dump into Zebulon. So I would really suggest we have a work session on the sole topic of transportation, planning, budgeting, and even the area impacts around us, because this is going to be a big problem.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner Baxter?
What I think we really need on top of just having a work session is we need to find out exactly how staff is working on Campo, how the mayor as the primary, me as the alternate, how we can work better on Campo, because, you know, like, I can't tell you the number of times that they forget that we're even in the room. We're still way out there. Everybody wants to talk about Garner and Holly Springs and Apex and connecting this point to this point to this point, and it's no place near us. And I really believe that we as a town need to develop an idea for a process or an approach of how we're going to address Campo, and ask them and tell them that we need more funding. We need to be placed higher on these lists. We need more points so that we can get our projects approved. And, you know, like, it almost sounds ridiculous to say that we need to find some allies at DOT, but we need some better allies at DOT. There are projects getting funded that just seem like cuckoo crazy local buttons when you consider the emergent issues that we have here in town. And yet these other projects are getting more points and are getting awarded these ridiculous multi-million-dollar awards. And when was the last time that we got anything significant, Mike? I feel like it's been a while.
There's the last project that we completed was the Beaver Dam Greenway, and we are currently in the process of working through NCDOT for the North Arundel Access Project. Both of those are Campo-related projects.
But I mean, like, the Greenway project, we got pennies compared to what some of these other folks are getting. So I think that we need to have better conversations with our COG. We need to have much better conversations with Campo, and we need to have some kind of action plan, because Larry's right. We got, you know, like, we can charge and talk about transportation impact fees until the screen goes up at 2:30 now, or whatever it is in the morning.
I won't be here to
But what it's not going to address, what we are getting $0 for, are all of the cars coming from other communities that travel through Zebulon to hop on the highway. And at this point, they're just traveling through. They might stop at McDonald's, but they're not adding a bunch of tax value to our town, but they're ripping up our roads and causing Public Works to have to take on the role of NCDOT to repairing streets and infrastructure that technically we're not responsible for, but if we wait for NCDOT, we'll be like falling into potholes and, you know, traveling to the center of the earth. I don't know. Maybe I'm done with my rant. The end. I don't even have a question. That was just a big statement.
To speak to what you just mentioned, I'm on the Legislative Policy Committee for the League. One of our top agenda items to bring to the legislature is to change that tier grading system, because we are lumped in with Cary and other municipalities that are way out of our league, and that impacts us when it comes to these projects. So that is something that we're asking, we will be asking for legislative help also. We will also be asking for legislative help with stormwater infrastructure, because we can't keep up with it, with this growth. If there's nothing in place through legislation to assist us. I can remember when we first started with stormwater, and it was like mandated from the feds, you do this, you do that, but they didn't give you any money to do it with. They just said it had to be done, and you got to follow these guidelines, or we're going to stick you. And Chris may be talking to that. When I'll stay away from that, Chris. But anyway, you know, we're not the only ones that's feeling this.
Yeah, but we're the most important ones in this town.
Yeah, but I think
this town is the most important in this town.
Did you have Commissioner Miles?
No, I just think we have an opportunity. I think Commissioner Baxter put it away some time back. We are one of the last municipalities that's growing, so we can get it right. We have an opportunity to take a step back. We don't have to emulate Cary, Apex, Wake Forest. Those places, they're already developed for the most part. We're still blessed with the opportunity that we can kind of regulate a little bit how we grow. And I think it's important that we give the citizens what's due to them, that right to grow as we continue to tout, grow smart. So just like I think my fellow commissioners, we work together and figure that out, because I know I'm getting those emails, those calls. It's just daily. What are you going to do about the traffic? Who's in control? What are you guys doing? We put you there. Figure it out. So I'm asking us to sit down and really do what Commissioner Lau said, sit down and have a work session or something on just that issue so we can figure it out. Because just growing for the sake of growing, it's not working right now.
Commissioner Clark?
Maybe this is something, you know, we've talked about bond and we haven't really gone anywhere with it. And this may be exactly what we need to do, is think of a transportation bond.
Commissioner Lau said that earlier.
And work with that. But we need to get to it. We need to, don't keep putting it off. We need to do that bond meeting and whatever we need to do.
Okay.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner Laux? Commissioner Miles?
Yes, I have a couple more questions from citizens. One of the questions I'm getting now about planning is high school. I'm getting that from a lot of parents now. Kids are transitioning to, are we kind of looking at where we at looking in the high school aspect of what's to come as far as planning?
I can speak to that.
Please.
Commissioner Baxter?
I've been in conversations with Wake County Public Schools, and I will have a meeting with, if somebody wants to join me for that, in December to talk about where we are and site planning and timelines. So that's just something that they reached out to me and asked if I had availability. So like it is on Wake County's, you know, like they know what we've got going on.
We are the last ones in the county for high school.
Yep.
We just had an election and we have a new representative also. I cannot think of her name.
Oh, you mean for
our
the
district?
school? Oh, yeah.
For our district, we have a new school board representative. So with that, we would need to start building relationships. So I'm all for that and joining in with Commissioner Baxter in that endeavor.
And I can tell you that the Wake County Public School planning staff, much like here, they have their planning staff, met with them approximately 3 weeks ago in terms of the growth projection rates and where everything is going on. And I've made it very clear that the concern is very apparent that we do not have a high school. So much like Commissioner Baxter mentioned, it is on their radar. Their staff is looking to find some calculation mechanism to help fast track that as quickly as possible, but still going to be several years out.
Commissioner Miles?
One last thing, if you could explain the word, when I say this word moratorium, can you break that down for me, please?
Moratorium is essentially a stoppage of something. As an example, I'm thinking in the context that the question was in, moratorium in terms of residential development would be a stoppage. There are certain mechanisms that need to be in place for a moratorium, a justification to stop development. One thing that's important to note is while a moratorium will stop new development from getting approved, it does not stop the existing development that's already here. As I noted in that matrix chart that listed all the neighborhoods, those developments are going to continue for 7 years. So even if you did a hard stop now, the citizens of the community are not going to see the results of that moratorium for several years out, because the growth is still going to continue based on things that have been previously approved. Typically with moratoriums, there has to be some sort of rational nexus on why you are putting a stoppage on those, on that development.
So essentially, we would be taking a pause for the cause to sit back and let the growth that we currently have take place. And then we have potential to give us time to kind of look at our traffic, the traffic impacts that we're having, things that are issues that we're having. So that potentially could be an answer for us, correct?
I would not recommend that as an answer. One case in point, so to reference Commissioner Laux, the traffic you are experiencing is coming from other places. And if you stop growth internally, you're still not only going to be dealing with that traffic, but that traffic is going to grow. The other reason we would not recommend that is while this development is coming, it is your avenue to both generate revenue and to build the roads that you need to build. Zebulon does not have enough roads. The roads that it has are too narrow, but it doesn't have enough roads. And so some of those new developments that Mike pointed out, particularly on the south side, those developments are going to be responsible for bringing in the necessary east-west connectors. And so I just want the board to know we can certainly share information about a moratorium, but don't do it thinking that it will solve the traffic problem, because it will not. The surrounding area is growing. It will grow more. It will continue to generate traffic coming through your area, exactly like Commissioner Baxter said. They are striving to get to that interchange between 64 and Arundel, and they will continue to come here whether you're growing or not. And if you're not growing, again, you're not generating revenue, and you're missing an opportunity to build roads that you need here.
I understand it seems to be we're kind of running like a business aspect. You're saying that we're looking at tax base, things of that nature. I completely understand we need those funds to operate here in the municipality. But when we're not doing it, I feel that we're not doing it in a way where it's not user-friendly. It's becoming, like I said, a nuisance, that traffic impact. Like I said, when I get it on a daily basis and phone calls, emails, it's just really time for us to address it. That's what I'm saying. So I throw that word moratorium out there. So that is something that, I did a little bit of research myself. A quick pause for the cause. It's not going to hurt about it. The developers that are looking to come, they're still going to be waiting in the wings to come if and when we did put something in place like that. Everything I've seen the municipalities that I researched on that did it, it kind of controlled their growth a little bit, and they were able to pick right back up 6 months to a year later and start growing again, and still was successful. Everything I saw, the research that I did on it.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. While Mary's getting settled in, I'd like to give an opportunity to introduce her. It's been a tremendous honor to work with Mary over the last 4 years. She came to us from working with IBM and working with Alta Planning and Design in Durham. She's a 2004 graduate of NC State, and you know that hurts my feelings. But when you see talent, you recognize talent and you hire talent, and that's what I feel like I did there. She has a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration and comes with the designation of cum laude. So she's definitely a smart young lady, and we have definitely noticed that over the last 4 years. 2 big projects and initiatives she's worked on that you may recall. We have Campo funds that we are seeking reimbursement for. She has weaved through all the federal regulations, state regulations, and successfully got you over $1.5 million in grant funds back. So that's a significant accomplishment, and kudos to Mary. In addition, we have been working with the state on our MS4 permit audit, and she has been critical in providing documentation to them to do the audit. In the middle of the audit, she was very helpful in providing that documentation, explaining that documentation in a clear and concise manner. And overall, she's been was effective in getting our rating that we got. I think she's a big piece of that rating that we got. It's better than what I expected, and a lot of that kudos goes to Mary. So, like I say, we are really excited to have Mary as part of our team. She's a true blessing and an asset to our department, and I think you'll see that tonight as she presents our quarterly report. Thank you, guys.
True.
Yeah, I second that.
Chris, that's very nice. All right, so as he said, my name is Mary, and I'm going to take you through the quarterly report and talk a little bit about what we've been up to for the last quarter and give a couple of insights into what we have coming. And you're going to have to tell me what I need to press. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so as Chief Perry mentioned, we're getting new streets all the time. This chart is a visual representation of all that growth you've been talking about. You're seeing here the growth in town-owned miles of street as well as town-owned miles of stormwater pipe. The growth is going crazy, and it's not going to slow down. It's not showing signs of slowing down anytime soon. So with that increase in infrastructure, what goes hand in hand with that is an increase in the maintenance. We have to take care of what we're calling the 4 S's of street maintenance, which is the sweeping, sidewalks, signage, and stormwater. And I'll dig in on sweeping just a little bit as an example. The miles of street have doubled, so the time to do that sweeping has increased. And as we've grown geographically towards the north, but where we take all that sweeping material is over near our facility on East Horton Street. I do know our address. It takes longer to come back and empty the hopper and then go back out and resume sweeping again if it fills up while they're out and about. So there's a time component that is growing with this maintenance. Unfortunately, we have not had a growth in operational staff to go with that. So one of the things you'll see in the coming budget is a request for an additional 3-man crew to help with this maintenance activity. Now, part of that, of course, is maintaining the actual pavement itself. And with a 20-year useful life, that breaks down to 5% of streets every year needing to be maintained and repaved in order to have a good quality condition of roadway. So we paved 1.5 miles over the last 2 years with the goal of eliminating the poor quality streets. Jason Brown is currently doing the pavement condition rating. That is an in-house visual analysis of the town-owned streets to tell us what roads are in what condition. And it lets us, it's really the driver behind prioritizing which streets will be repaved with the available dollars for it. That current cost for annual repaving is $400,000, but again, it's growing with the street miles. But Chris will give you more of an update on all of that stuff during budget once the PCR is completed in January. This is a literal visual representation of that growth and maintenance. This chart shows you the 10% goals that are requirements of that stormwater permit. So as we've added miles of pipe, as we've added additional structures, those are your drop basins and things like that, we have a requirement under our permit to inspect 10% of those structures every year and to clean 10% of those lines every year. So with the system having roughly doubled over the last decade, those maintenance requirements have roughly doubled over the last decade. But again, we haven't added the staff that's actually doing that maintenance. What you've seen in prior budgets is requests for additional funding to have outside parties come do that. But what we'd really like to address that with is additional staff in-house so that we can keep up with the streets and the stormwater maintenance in a more comprehensive way and be less reactive, a little bit more proactive, and so that we can meet those stormwater goals on a consistent basis. Right now, as Chris mentioned, we're working through the routine audit that comes with renewing the stormwater permit every few years. We did get a notice of deficiency, which is like, your program needs improvement. It's not a notice of violation. It just sounds bad, but it's not a notice of violation where they're saying you're not meeting your permit requirements at all. It's saying there are areas of improvement. The auditor actually commented during the DEQ portion of the assessment that we appear to be doing as well as we could be with the resources allocated to it. We just need to allocate more resources to the program to be in true compliance with the permit and the intent behind it. One of the other things we recently completed was the conditions assessment. I believe Chris has talked to you about that before, so I won't go in detail. It identified 6 projects, 6 major projects that represent $6.4 million in needed improvements to the stormwater system. I believe he brought the top 2 projects before you. One of them was the West Horton Street Drainage Project, which I'll talk a little bit more about tonight, and the other one was the Sycamore Arundel Drainage Project. But between the system growth, the audit outcome, and the conditions analysis, the key takeaway from all of that is that investments are going to be needed in order to maintain the system, in order to have a functioning system and comply with the permit requirements. We need additional personnel, we need investments in technology, and of course the infrastructure itself. So during budget, Chris will go into more detail about that, and staff will also analyze and may recommend bringing back the stormwater utility fee as a means of funding those needed investments and improvements. All right, so the West Horton Drainage Project is the one that y'all chose of the 2 to prioritize and to use the ARPA funds. We have $1.885 million in ARPA funds going towards this. Roadway and stormwater construction projects, they typically take 2 to 4 years to complete. They're very slow. And so at about 3 years for this project, we are right in that window. We are currently at the beginning of that timeline. We are working towards developing a request for qualifications and getting that out on the street. Because this is design work valued at $50,000 or more, we are required by North Carolina general statute to follow the Minnie Brooks Act, which prescribes a set of steps we must take in hiring the design firm. So we need to issue a request for qualifications. We're forming a selection committee. Chris has reached out to Tom Covington with Wake County Facilities Design and to the Public Works Director at the town of Wake Forest and asked them to join us in forming a selection committee. We will release that RFQ. We'll get back the statements of qualifications, and the committee will assess them using a scoring matrix so that everyone is evaluated fairly and evenly. The top 3 firms would then be invited back for interviews. The committee will depict the most qualified firm, and then the town negotiates with that firm. After that point, one of the things required by the statute is that we bring the contract back to you for award. So you will see us again in a few months to talk about how that shook out and who it is that we would think is the most qualified to carry this design forward. This is why it takes so long. That whole process is going to take 4 months. So after that, we're estimating about 8 months for the survey, design, and permitting. Then we'll go through a similar process for hiring the contractor for the construction piece. And again, this is major construction. We have to go through the full process. So it'll take another 4 months for that. That's for the contracting, the bidding, the award, all of that. Construction should take about another 8 months to get us to substantial completion, plus a month for final completion and all the punch list items. And then because this is federally funded, we're looking at another 6 to 8 months for full project closeout and reimbursement. So this is how we get to that 3 years, and just kind of wanted to give you some insight into where we are in that and what we have to go through to get there. And ending with something happy, these are some pictures of us at the various town events that we've participated in for the last quarter. Sometimes we're a little bit more behind the scenes, like with the Coat Drive or Rock the Block. Sometimes we're a little bit more visible, like the police's event with Faith in Blue. And then, of course, our event, Community Recycling Day, that we just had in the fall. And I'll turn it over to you for any questions.
Questions, comments from the board? Commissioner Miles?
I just think as we go forward, just a quick question. The contract, you explained the
Speaker.
contract. You explained the contract aspect of things.
Yes.
Do we, there again, I look local. How do we kind of like that small man on the totem pole here in Zebulon? How do we assist and ensure that he's working, he or she is able to work here in Zebulon? If there's an opportunity for that, what can we do to do that?
So if the person cannot, or the firm cannot do the work here, they're not qualified. Now, if they are based here, we run into 2 things. One is that this is federally funded, and under the uniform guidance, we are not allowed to have a local preference. So not to say that there's ways around that, but there are legitimate things that can lead to an inherent local practice. So I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with the stormwater project. If you have a service contract that would require a service technician to be on site, it does not help if that technician is based in Michigan. You know, so there are things that can lead to a local preference, but using federal dollars, we are explicitly prohibited from it. That said, when it comes to this kind of work, they tend to be local because they don't want to have to travel very far. And as was mentioned, there's so much work right now, you're unlikely to get bids from very far away anyway.
Okay. Last question. So Tim Bailey will be happy you guys then. Okay. Good deal. Good deal.
Mr. Baxter?
Believe it or not, no.
Commissioner Laux?
No.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner Clark?
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that all?
Mayor, that concludes staff reports for the
looking for
evening.
more. He don't know what he do. It ain't 11. It's not 11 o'clock.
Don't let them find anything else.
Make it look like my desk.
The questions, comments from members of the board?
I just have one comment real fast.
Commissioner Miles?
Once again, in closing, I just want to thank you guys for listening to allow me to table that Park and Rec standards thing earlier and then work through it and we discuss it and get something moving forward. I appreciate that and working together with me.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Adjourn.
Oh, you definitely hit it then.
Did you have a chance to check on that?
And work sessions used to be like an hour and a half.
Now he's